The story begins with a former merchandiser who hated mankind. He thought that people were contradictory creatures. For a long time, he had sudden desires to break with everything in this world. He clutched his phone. He would suddenly switch off his mobile phone and also delete his social media accounts. However, when he became sad, he would reconnect again. He himself did not understand why such awakenings were taking hold of him. This contradiction in his soul is the most terrible thing in the world, and he can do nothing about it. The man thought about people. He had taken it into his habit to live cautiously in these shackles. The desire to put an end to this disgusting cycle came to him suddenly. It was a big lottery win. He left the company, moved alone to a rural town in Hokkaido, and began farming as a hobby. It was at that time that he realized that he had been transported to another world, like an RPG model. There were many different creatures around him. While collecting different plants, he sighed quietly, saying that this was probably enough. The man happily spoke about how good it was to live in freedom. He looked around and thought that although this was another world, he was nervous at first when he was suddenly carried away in such a place. But it seemed to him that he could somehow cope. Luckily, during all this disaster, it was moved along with the chicken coop and the farm tool shed. He could eat the eggs laid by chickens, and he could also use farming tools to gather edible wild plants. He worked thinking that he would definitely not die of hunger in the near future. He raised his hand and smiled slyly, thinking that if we were talking about another world, then there should be magic and skills there. However, he noticed that nothing was happening. He was experiencing strong emotions because he had already tried various chants and poses, and as a result, he got the result. The man put some fruit in his mouth, then extended his hand and made an assessment. He immediately received information that the plant was indeed a potato fruit. He suggested that perhaps all he could use was just the skill of assessment, which most likely echoed a pattern of his past behavior, from his days as an employee in a trading firm. He pulled the trash out of his mouth and thought it looked convenient. But this power is limited by the fact that he can only analyze in detail what he puts in his mouth. He started collecting plants, saying that if he boiled it with the magical herb Virginia, it seemed like something good would come out. Suddenly, he was surprised. Right in front of him stood an evil monster growling at the man. He was surprised and with loud screams led the monster after him. Suddenly, the monster fell into a large hole covered with grass. With a loud crack, it fell in. As this happened, the man approached and happily noticed that the monster was trapped. He sighed awkwardly and said happily that he was glad he had set the trap earlier. Immediately after that, he tried to dispel the mysterious window that had appeared in front of him. When he moved from the first level to the second, he was scared by the status window that suddenly appeared, but he was not so surprised anymore. However, he thought about the third level. He came to the conclusion that it was rather weak for him. These were his thoughts on this matter. By defeating monsters, he can evaluate them. He looked at the monster, which turned out to be a goblin, and thought about the fact that this area is called Lancaster. He picked up the monster's dagger and thought he would only take the equipment. He smiled and said that he should use whatever he thought he could use anyway, because that was the basis of survival. He prayed and then left that place. After a while, he returned to his barn and informed the animals of his return. He decided that he would immediately use the stones and medicinal herbs he had collected. He decided that he would first work on the fire stone and the femto stone. He took a hammer and began to crush the stones. When he had finished, he carefully mixed the resulting powder. Then he took a whetstone for agricultural implements and said that if this were used to polish the goblin's dagger, you will get a fire dagger. He was pleased with his work and said that if he had at least some grinding material, it would be possible to add properties to other weapons, and he should collect more of it. Next, he decided to deal with the herb iron with a healing effect and the magical herb virgin. In addition, he recently received a new fruit of the potato pancake. After evaporating these three kinds of plants, he carefully strained it. Afterwards, he got the finished mixture and happily noticed that it was a double potion. As he expected, it turned out cool stuff. The class of medicinal herbs in this form has an effect, but the slow absorption of medicinal properties and the amount that must be eaten create difficulties. He decided to try making potions from the poisonous herbs batter and gadel. Since they were potions, they had better absorption efficiency, and it also started working immediately. He looked at the horrible mixture and thought that he needed to drink it to make the assessment. He picked up the flower and wondered what would happen if he combined it with the antidote 30. He lightly touched the potion with his tongue and then immediately fell to the ground. He chewed the antidote and thought that if anyone was looking at him now, they would definitely think that the guy was a fool. In the mask, he said that he had obtained a rather strong poison, and he would use it in battle, coating the tips of his arrows with it. If the plants collected with roots were buried in a simple field, he hoped that they could be successfully bred. He sat down a little lower and thought it was bait. After a while, chickens gathered around this grass. He noticed that the chicken wings had become a little shinier. He used the appraisal and was surprised by what he saw. He didn't know that was possible since the animal's meat had restorative powers. He wondered if tonic herbs could interact with medicinal herbs. He approached one of the chickens. After a while, this very chicken was cooking on the fire. The guy was happy because he was already cutting up the chicken carcasses. He ate and talked about how delicious it was, and the animal's life was not in vain. The night passed and the boy buried the remains of the chicken in the ground. He said that part of it would live a long life in this world. He thought it was time to go to town and sell what he had created. There are a lot of things that he, being an ordinary Japanese person from the beginning, cannot create with his own hands, and in order to buy them, he needs to get rich. He thought that the round trip would take 3 hours, which was a long time, but he was serious. He was not used to walking long distances and his legs were weak. He noticed a horse and wondered if he could buy one in the city, so he came to the city of Rista. He told the guards he was a merchant, but they spoke in an unfamiliar language. He still didn't understand what they were saying. He picked up his goods and the guards understood everything and let him in. He was glad because the guards understood everything. He didn't understand the language of the locals, but there was no need to memorize it. He only needed to remember the basic addresses, and if he understood numbers, there would be no problems with trade transactions, and he had nothing to worry about. In front of a large building, he remembered that there was also an adventurers guild in this city where he had signed up by pure chance. He went in there. The guild has a notice board with tasks and a cash desk where you can get information about all achievements. He flipped through a few and walked up to the cash register, then said he was selling. He mainly fishes for long-toothed grouper, so he had to either submit or join forces and fight. Adding to the fact that he didn't understand the language made it even more difficult. He heard someone call out to Keigo. It was Margot, a merchant of weapons and armor and also a merchant's wife. 2 people who are cared for in the city. He greeted them. He raised the fire blade and spoke of the long-awaited trade. Upon seeing the weapon, Margot exclaimed that he was buying it. Keigo noted that weapons with properties were popular. This time he sold it to Margot, and next time he would make more and they should not quarrel. Suddenly the man said something to Keigo. The guy realized that he could tell from the atmosphere what they were talking about. They asked why he didn't move to the city. The guy said unequivocally that he would not move. He felt sorry for the request. The repeated impulses to break away from everything that had gripped him in the previous world. He didn't know when they would appear in this one. He's really bad at building relationships with people. He thought that he was eating like that. The man had saved up a considerable amount of gold coins and wanted to buy a horse. He made an assessment and translated the phrase. He realized that the language of this country is called Lancaster. If you use the evaluation skill on Japanese sentences, the Lancaster language will appear. Translation takes time, but communication can be done in writing. The merchant's wife smiled and agreed. The boy thought that, as expected, he could rely on Mrs. Sarasa. She left and asked him to wait. After a while, she returned with the horse. He gave her the money and thanked her. She was happy. Keigo said it would be easier for him to return. He finished his business in the city and could return. The road was calm, but he did not understand why Sarasa and Margot went with him. He handed them the money again. He thought that if he was buying a horse, he should have a stable. However, he even received an offer to build a forge. He was grateful for it. He was in a turbid state, rejecting city life for fear of those very urges. He was trapped in his own shell. Margot and Sarasa continued to gently push through her, even to someone like him. He looked up. He thought that there was more to this than just business relations. He felt something else. But nevertheless, I did not want to create even more shackles, beyond the necessary norm. He sighed and thought that he even received some plans and concerns. He thought he would still need to thank these 2 later. The extension was completed, and Keigo's level rose to that of a merchant and a farmer. He was pleased that his horse, Renante, also liked the stable. Designed by Margot and Sarasa, the merchants of this world, Lancaster. A forge and stables were added to its chicken coop and gun shed. Thanks to this, Keigo also had places where he could put the items he created. It looks like he will be able to sleep in peace and mix elixirs without worrying about monsters. He tried to boil well the magic herb virgin and the herb antidote moray eel. He tried the mixture and noticed that he had discovered a new variety. He decided to divide it into parts for personal use and for trade. He said that it was possible to make supplies there because the forge was good, and he didn't know whether he should also increase the production of attribute weapons. Before that, Keigo had to think about Margot and Sarasa's gratitude. Although he spoke of gratitude, he did not know what he could do for them. He thought of treats and dinner. He also had a supply of salt which he thought he would offer them. The shops in the town of Ristam mostly contained items that could be stored, such as dried meat or hard bread. If these were fresh ingredients, it would probably bring joy. He thought about trying to use leafy plants as house herbs. And he was going to divide the meat between 3 people, and if you take the chicken into account, then you need at least 2. However, if you eat more than the indicator, the amount of eggs collected will decrease. He thought about it. As a farmer, he had no interest in this world, but he was interested in the possibility of hunting. Even if it was a rabbit, he could hunt. Keigo got ready and went out but saw a wolf-shaped monster at the house. He noticed that the monster was trapped. It was just in time. He wondered if he seemed unfair since it raised his level. He assessed and saw that the monster was edible. Keigo came to the city. He was saved by the dismantling shop attached to the guild. As expected, he was inexperienced in cutting up a wolf. Keigo had time to wait. He noticed an interesting task. It was a mission to subdue a certain cockatrice. He thought that the order to pacify had nothing to do with him. Suddenly, someone came up to him. It was Administrator Dan. The man started to say something. Keigo thought he still didn't understand what Dan was saying. The man pointed at something and said about Kai. Keigo wondered if he had misheard. He wondered if he should follow Dan. The guy was surprised when he found out that he was brought to the dojo. The man greeted Keigo Okuda. The guy greeted him. He was glad because he would be able to acquire some skills. He's wanted this for a long time. Self-defense combat skills. The first thing the guy did was express his gratitude to the man. The teacher broke the doll in front of him with one blow. Keigo was amazed. The man handed the boy a stick and he decided to give it a try. He was about to strike. Keigo noticed that the weapon was glowing. He struck. He noticed that he had acquired the skill. The others applauded him. He took the weapon and thanked the man. Keigo read the translation and learned that due to the excessive fatalities of adventurers, Kai was giving free instruction in combat strikes. Keigo thought that Master Kai's blow was surprisingly powerful. Depending on their tempering, they should be useful. The boy bought several items. He is grateful that because of the dojo skill, he learned that he can acquire skills other than evaluation. He decided that when the preparation for cooking is ready, he will practice. Suddenly, he was surprised to see a stone statue of a goblin. In an instant, an enraged cockatrice appeared there. Keigo ran away from there very quickly with his horse. He came home and hugged the chicken. He cried, saying that it was impossible. Suddenly, he heard knocks on his door. It was a man. He opened the door and saw Sarasa. He cried harder and hugged her. He said it was scary. She was surprised. Keigo bashfully noticed that Margot was there too. There was another person with them. He asked who it was. He exclaimed that it was different and that it was a greeting in Japanese. He thought that he should calm down because the language was completely incomprehensible. Keigo was very ashamed to look pathetic in front of a person he had just met. Margot told the guy about the cockatrices. Keigo was surprised that they took the task. With this adventure-like man and a weapon in reserve, he assumed that they would go to pacify the monster. He was grateful because if he relied on them, everything would be fine. They were talking about something. Keigo had no idea how the situation stood right now, but he could prepare and hand over the weapons and medicines he had stocked up on. He decided to write the names of the items on the board. With different languages, this was quite difficult. However, this feeling was pleasant. He collected a double potion as well as a Parun detox potion. Margot was happy to see this. Keigo said that it seemed like they could use this potion since everything would be fine then. Sarasa showed him the drawing. He realized that they had worked out a strategy. He then asked if they wanted him to attack using his bow as a signal. He didn't understand why he was being dragged into taming a cockatrice. Unlike them, he was an employee of a trading company until recently. In this game-like world, it is not advisable to bet your life against a monster, even if you are told to do so. He was scared and Sarasa wanted to calm him down. He looked at the others and they were also saying something to him. He was afraid they said something like 3 arrows. He sighed. Of course, if he walked like that, he wouldn't do anything in fear. He was also sure that if he was alone, he would most likely die. He said that he understood and went on his way extremely pale. His only hope was to return home alive. While he was hiding, the cockatrice came out. Keigo was amazed at how big the monster was. He envied Sarasa, who stayed behind to watch the house. The other 2 were still there. He pulled the bowstring, executing the plan. The monster was surprised but did not have time to dodge. Keigo exclaimed that he had hit. The adventurer and Margot jumped out and charged. Keigo was impressed and thought that these 2 were probably higher level than him. Suddenly he noticed that his eyes met the monster's. It was dangerous. The cockatrice was about to attack. Keigo was afraid because he couldn't dodge. The attack flew straight at the frozen Keigo. In an instant, the adventurer covered the guy with his body and began to freeze. The guy asked if this was petrification. Margit said that you need to use a detox potion. Keigo wondered if it would work on the petrification. He handed it to the adventurer and together they drank the potion. The petrification subsided. Keigo said that if this continues, a long-range counterattack will be necessary. The guy was weak. He said that if he attacked now, it seemed like Keigo could defeat him. He told the adventurer that he should use a punch. He calmed down and together they rushed to attack. In unison they struck and the cockatrice died. Keigo leveled up. He was surprised that he did it. They were glad. The adventurer said something that Keigo realized was Juno. He thanked them both. 3 arrows. Even if allies are completely useless individually, by combining the forces of 3 people you can win. And one of those arrows was more fragile than it looked. He wondered if he'd just gotten lucky this time. He was afraid of the impulses within him that wanted to end it all. The boys ate heartily and were happy. Keigo said that this time he added garlic and salt to the meat, but even without them it tasted pretty good. He said that they should eat as much as they could and there was no need to rush. A deliciously prepared meal can express many different feelings. Keigo returned to them with another portion of food. He was grateful to Juno for helping him defeat the cockatrice, and he was equally grateful to Sarasa and Margot for building his stables and forge. Together, they drank strong drinks and rejoiced. Suddenly, they heard some sounds and looked tensely at the street. There they met fire wolves. On top of that, there were 3 of them. Keigo wondered if it was possible that they had come to the smell of the food the guy had prepared. The boys took up arms. Keigo thought it was normal for strong monsters to come to the smell of food. The boy told the others that if the monsters don't attack them, then they don't need to attack first. The guys were talking to each other, and Keigo tried to express his thoughts. He raised the bow and pointed at it, then made a few more movements, but he was not understood. Sarasa came by this time. She looked at Keigo with a slightly worried expression, then laughed. He didn't want her to laugh while looking at him. He thought it was better to remain neutral and spread less evil around. And after all he had been through, he didn't really want to become easy prey again. In this world, the most important thing is not defeating the enemy but survival. He wanted to eliminate risks. When the boys finished eating, they said goodbye to Keigo and left in the cart. He helped them along the way and said that he was able to thank the 3 and get some training. He picked up a few objects and looked out at the street again. He took them and went back where he dug a hole and planted something in the ground. He thought that would be enough. He made a classic nest trap. This farm was perfect for setting traps of this kind. Now he put a bunch of poisonous grass in there which completed the preparations. He decided it was time to move on to the next one. Keigo took a large board, then processed it and made some object. He thought that it would do. He carried it out and began to push wooden sticks into the ground with a hammer. He wanted to put them around his house. Later he finished. It was a rattle alarm that he installed. All he had to do was install the tiger trap he bought from the guild. He needed to set it up and then his security system was ready. He was glad because caution is never too much. His chance to live had increased. Even though he lived on the outskirts, it was worth putting up a warning sign just in case. He put up a sign and said that he had done everything that needed to be done outside, and all that was left was to put away the tools. He thought about making repairs to the hut, but first he wanted to make himself a shield. And so the evening came. Keigo had finished cleaning and was already working on something else. He said that even if it seemed like a tedious task, once he started, he wouldn't be able to stop. He had no boards left at all, and he had managed to make a lot of things with them today, so it wasn't particularly surprising. Even though he lives in a small hut that resembles a chicken coop, this is finally a home created by his own hands. He was glad because now he could have dinner. Today on the menu, Keigo had blue wolf steak with the addition of medicinal herbs arena and a pinch of salt. Keigo also decided to have a Milanese fruit drink because it goes well with meat dishes. Even though it was the same as what he had for lunch, it was still very tasty. He wished himself bon appetit. Then he froze, hearing something. He wondered if these were the same wolves that had been roaming the area this afternoon. Suddenly the sounds became louder and he got scared and fell. He took the lid as a shield and said that this couldn't be. He opened the door and wondered if it could be that they were people and they needed something. He tried to convince himself of that. He opened the door and looked out. When he saw the wolves, he realized that they were not people after all. He pulled the bowstring and thought that first he had to finish off the one who had fallen behind the pack. He had killed one wolf with one shot, so he had 2 more to kill. He got up and looked out but found that they were not there. He found himself in a dangerous position, with both wolves attacking him from different sides. Keigo tensed up. He ducked and defended himself from the attack. He pushed one of the wolves with the lid, throwing him into a trap with poisonous flowers. He then twirled his sword, finishing off the 3rd wolf. Adrenaline was rushing to his head. He felt no fear at all, even though the situation was dire. There was only one wolf left in front of him. He pulled out his sword. When the wolf rushed at him, he swung his sword and defeated the monster. Keigo has leveled up. After that, he fell on his back and sighed. He said it was close and he should have written a suicide note. He was worried because no matter how much strength he had, it was not enough in this world. Suddenly he heard the sound again. He jumped up and exclaimed that it was not over yet. He, waving his sword, tried to find the source. Suddenly he saw something small. In an instant he realized everything. The little wolf stood next to the bodies of the slain monsters. When he saw Keigo, he began to circle around his feet. The wolves were going to kill Keigo. Although it was inevitable, all that was left of them now was their puppy, which the boy held in his arms. He denied it. Keigo couldn't kill this puppy, it would be too much. The boy hugged the wolf and said that he would take responsibility for raising this baby. He walked into the house and lay down on the bed hugging the puppy. And so the morning came. Sarasa was delighted with this wolf cub. Keigo shouted at her that this puppy was not for sale. He noticed that the girl apparently really liked this wolf cub. Skinning 3 wolves is no easy task, so he asked the boys for help. He conducted an assessment on the ash wolf's fang. He looked at the puppy, realizing its breed. Suddenly the wolf licked the boy's face. Keigo fell silent, then said that he was selling everything that was left of the wolves, even though these wolves wanted to eat him. But he did an assessment on the cub when he woke up. It turns out he's a cub of a rare species of ash wolf, whose fur is significantly different from that of other wolves. If the wolf cub grows up with humans, it probably won't attack them. If it harms humans when it grows up, Keigo will have to take responsibility and kill it. If he had understood what happened to his parents, then perhaps the wolf cub would have wanted to take revenge on Keigo. That was the law of this world. The weak became food for the strong. But Keigo wanted to do everything he could to achieve that. He decided to make a cloak out of ash-colored fur. He liked the color, and besides, the wolf cub would recognize Keigo as his parent through the smell of the fur. He said goodbye to the boys again and wished them a safe journey. Then he looked at the wolf cub and thought about his name. Keigo picked him up and said that they would meet little Ash. The puppy barked sweetly. In this stench, someone was smiling slyly, holding a blade. Keigo was shouting loudly at Ash not to eat those chickens. The puppy was very active, and the guy had to run after him and stop him. From that moment on, Keigo had no time to be sad. He swore on Ash's father that he would raise him. The cheerful wolf cub returned, and Keigo noticed that he was covered in mud again today. He picked Ash up and said that if he got dirty every day, they might run out of water. He turned and said that Margot had left some extra ingots and he was wondering what he could make with them. He melted them down and then began to shape the metal. After some time, he was finally able to give them some form. In the kitchen, it took him a long time to get to work, but he finally exclaimed that the heated bath was ready. Ash barked nearby. Keigo was happy because he could finally take a bath. After he got here, he had been just wiping himself with water all the time. With this cart, he would be able to transport a huge amount of water. He sat down and told Renante to go ahead. After a while, he arrived at the spring. He exclaimed joyfully about how spacious and peaceful the place was. He scooped up some water in his hands and then poured it over his face. Keigo smiled and said how refreshing it was. He dried himself and thought that he buys drinking water in the city, but if he needs a lot of water, it is more convenient to go to the lake. He thought that he didn't think he had seen such monsters before, but as long as they weren't aggressive, then everything was fine. Keigo happily told Ash that they were going to take a lot of water now. Suddenly, he noticed that the wolf cub was extremely angry and growled at the water. Keigo came up and asked what was going on and if there was someone there. Ash only growled louder. The next moment, something burst out of the water and hit the lid the boy was using to protect himself. Keigo fell backwards and hit his back. A huge monster jumped out of the water. It stood right in front of the guy. Ash rushed to attack the water monster. The monster was taken aback and screamed loudly when the wolf cub bit him. Keigo praised Ash while pulling the bowstring. Immediately after that, he shot the monster with a poisoned arrow. The monster screamed loudly, after which Keigo was able to strike it with his sword and finish it off. Thanks to this battle, the guy's level was raised. He said that it was surprisingly a very easy victory. Afterwards, he took back his words and turned to Ash, saying that it was all thanks to him. He put his hand to the monster and made an assessment. It was a water monster that specialized in water magic. Keigo said that what the monster shot at him was water magic. He looked at the wolf cub and said that if Ash hadn't warned him, he would have been dead by now. He stroked the wolf cub and assessed the scales that were in the dog's mouth. It was a Murnam scale. After reading its description, Keigo praised his pet again. He addressed it as a partner and said that they were now officially partners. It was quite noisy in Keigo's hut that night. His clothes were folded while he himself loudly sang the Fifth Symphony, Part 2. They were lying in the bathtub with Ash and singing loudly. Keigo laughed loudly and said that Ash seemed to like this symphony. He picked up a small object and showed it to Ash, after which the wolf cub started to hit it with his paws. Keigo laughed and said how cute it was. He thought about how he had to get stronger in order to protect Ash. He thought that the problem might be in his diet. He fed the puppy herbs and eggs, but there were problems because Ash, of course, is cute, but he is still a wolf. Walk the wolf pup splashed in the bath. Keigo praised him, saying that he can handle a monster with a towel. He decided that he would avoid useless battles. While the fire was burning, Keigo was already deep in thought. He also learned today that there are monsters that can use magic. He looked at Ash, thinking that attacking like that would be better than just defending, but he didn't know what else he could do. Keigo thought that maybe he should buy a stronger weapon to be able to fight them. He dived into the water, thinking that this was too much trouble and he needed to leave these thoughts behind. At this time, Ash began to worry because he lost Keigo. The guy jumped out of the water and caught the frightened wolf cub. While Ash was splashing, Keigo just laughed. He thought that it was fate that he met Ash in this world, at least that's what he thought. Keigo was confident that he could protect Ash and live just as peacefully. The wolf cub shook off the water. Keigo said that now they can take hot baths whenever they want. He got dressed and noticed that he felt a little uneasy. He decided to get rid of these thoughts because there was nothing he could do until everything dried. Keigo bought this outfit in the city, and when he puts it on, he clearly realizes that he is in another world. He looks around, trying to figure out where it is. He put on his headdress and exclaimed that he would make a weapon today. He began with increasing enthusiasm. He didn't think it would be easy. Keigo practiced blacksmithing for several days with the iron scraps. With the fangs of the ash wolf, a rare item that Juno had given him, he was now working. By melting down and using iron ingots that were much more expensive than the scraps he had used a little earlier. Finally, he was able to complete the beautiful weapon. He happily turned to Ash and said that he did it himself. The wolf cub didn't pay attention at all, playing with the butterfly. Keigo silently returned to his work with an awkward smile. He said that he needed to finish the handle. Afterwards, he made an assessment, and his weapon was named Wolverine's Sword. Keigo noted that it really did sound great. He thought that with this he could definitely protect Ash. Then he saw some Murnam scales. He decided to also use the fire stone he had recently collected. He decided that he should try to crush the scales and the stone and mix the dust together. Nothing happened in the process, and now he needed to taste it to make an assessment. He tried a little, then exclaimed that his tongue was vibrating. He made a heavy assessment. He saw that he had created Thunder Demon Powder. He realized that by combining the elements of fire and water, lightning could be created. If this is true, he needs to polish the Wolverine's sword with this powder. When he is done, he decides to conduct an assessment and is convinced of his theory. He got the Wolverine Thunder Sword. Keigo felt like he had done something amazing. He began to tape up his weapon and said that all he had to do was wrap the handle with duct tape so that he could hold it with his bare hands. Afterwards, he joyfully exclaimed that the new weapon was ready. He asked Ash what he thought. The wolf cub was already fast asleep next to him. The guy, seeing this, quietly sat down next to him and then began to stroke the puppy's head. Keigo thought that he wanted to use magic too, but he realized that he would need to improve his defense and shooting skills first, and they could help him with that. Since Keigo had already made the decision that he would protect Ash as both a parent and a partner, he had to continue improving his defensive skills. Moreover, it was not always possible to rely on shooting, since sooner or later the ingredients for the poison could run out. That's why he decided to learn defense from Master Kai. He bowed and politely asked the man about it. Kai handed the boy the bow. Keigo was taken aback and asked if he could keep it, after which he thanked the man. Kai explained something in another language, after which he shot. At that moment, Keigo noticed that the man's arrow began to glow. It hit the target with incredible force, producing a loud crack and many sounds. Keigo said in amazement that he already knew Kai was very cool, but he didn't expect him to be so good. Kai told the guy to try. Kei exclaimed that he would try it now. He took the bow and arrows and thought that he needed to concentrate and repeat exactly what Kai's teacher did. He did just that. Pulling the bowstring, he shouted a charge and timed his shot. His arrow hit the edge of the target. Keigo nervously said that he had succeeded, but he also noted that he needed to work on it more. He had acquired the skill. Kai took the wooden shield and told Keigo to try it. Now it was time for defense. The boy thought that it took a certain amount of courage to go against a person, all for the sake of learning new skills. He exclaimed that he was attacking. He struck Kai's shield with all his might, but he felt only pain as if he had struck steel. His whole body was shaking. He took this wooden shield and said that it was his turn. He said the same words, after which Kai warned him. He also hit the guy, but Keigo fell back with a loud crack, and his shield followed him. He lay on the floor and trembled, but he had acquired the skill. All he had to do was practice, because then he would definitely succeed. He thanked them and left. On the way home, he thought that he had certainly learned a lot of skills today, but he was incredibly tired. He had to train more because there was no other way. Suddenly he saw Sarasa. She gave him the cloak he had ordered. As expected from Sarasa, the item was of the highest quality. He saw Ash in Sarasa's arms and wondered if he cared about the wolf cub. He pushed those thoughts aside because it was a memory of his parents and he shouldn't worry about it. He thanked the girl. Sarasa looked at the boy's shield, then made a cross with her hands. She walked away, then returned with a small shield. He was confused. He noticed that this shield looked sturdy, and in the end, he just used a barrel lid for it. This would definitely come in handy. He thanked the girl and bought the item. Keigo noticed that Ash seemed very comfortable in Sarasa's arms, and he envied the wolf cub. He then returned to Keigo's arms, and together they went home. Their Keigo tried on the coat again, but it still looked amazing. He noticed that it even had an inside pocket for a flask. He thought about how he still had some of the Murnam scale dust left. He thought about adding an element to the armor. When he was done, Keigo noticed that the cloak was now shining. He made an assessment and found out that his ash wolf cloak was now fire-resistant. He was surprised and thought that by enchanting his armor with the water element, he had gained fire resistance. He said that it was better to have an advantage than not anyway. He thought that he should enchant the shield as well. It was a new discovery for him. He picked Ash up and said that his dad would definitely protect him. Ash turned away and Keigo asked what kind of attitude this was. Then the wolf cub started licking the boy's face. A lot of new things have happened in the last few days, and Keigo also realized that he is still weak without Ash. The guy asked the wolf cub to stop because he is not edible. Keigo shot arrows at his home target and then drank some water. He said that training had now become a daily routine for him. Suddenly Ash started barking loudly. Keigo was surprised and went out to look. He was very surprised. In front of his house there were people on horses who were strutting around there. A rather arrogant-looking man stopped right in front of the guy. Behind them, Keigo saw Margot and Jun with saddened faces. He noticed that this man looked very much like an aristocrat with adventurers, but he did not understand at all what he wanted from him. Keigo knew he was a terrible person, but he was glad that none of his loved ones were hurt. The guy was very surprised when he was given the task of accompanying someone into a forest dungeon. He would never agree to this for anything in the world. Keigo was a simple villager who lived near the city, and the nobleman with such a pack of soldiers could not cope with a bunch of monsters. He tried to refuse, but Margot quickly shut him up. He shook his head, telling him not to do it. To his surprise, even Margot couldn't refuse this man. He had to agree. He tried to explain to Ash that they would have to provide them with the potion. Judging by all the conversations around him, Keigo came to the conclusion that this man's name was Byron. The guy wondered if the monsters in the dungeon were stronger than the usual ones. He collected herbs, thinking that he usually didn't go into the forest, but now he could collect new herbs to study. They started fighting. Keigo thought about how everything that had happened seemed unreal to him. The nobleman and his retinue were giving orders from a safe place. He had the feeling that they weren't even going to help them. Whatever happened to the mercenaries, they didn't care. The adventurers fought hard against a bunch of monsters, trying to survive. Keigo was tired of it back in his world, but here it was the same. In this world, this inequality still existed. The boys tried to hold back the monster's attack, shouting at the others to run. Keigo defended himself with his shield, listening to the screams of others. The monster slowly approached him, and Keigo was surprised to see that the opponent's movements had slowed down. He turned back and exclaimed that they should run now. The boys returned, taking with them the body of one of the monsters. Keigo had leveled up. The boys were talking about how terrible it was to go to such a place. Keigo assessed the monster, which turned out to be a hellhound. He was a little surprised to see the spikes. At that moment, an aristocrat began to approach them, shouting something furiously. Keigo knew it was natural for the nobleman to be angry about the escape. He pulled out a small bag of money and hoped that he would have mercy. He handed the money to the man. He knew that the best choice was to show his regret. Keigo realized that in addition to monsters, this other world contains powerful enemies called aristocrats. The boys stood at the many graves and prayed for the repose of these people. As for Keigo, even after such a severe trial, few were affected by the death of others. Maybe if Keigo thought that his life depended on this aristocrat, he wouldn't have mourned at all either. He helped others, thinking that living in the city sounded like a good idea. He had already thought about this option, but whether he was there in the city or outside of it, he could meet this monster calling himself an aristocrat. Regardless of the location, he simply could not escape from fear for his life. So Keigo decided that he would prioritize peace of mind over safety. He didn't want to interact with people from the start. He understood that he looked like a weirdo from the outside, but he no longer cared what people thought of him. Margot apologized to the guy. Keigo said that they didn't need to apologize. He just wanted to be left alone right now. He wanted to get home as soon as possible, where Ash was waiting for him. He said goodbye to the guys and walked away. He felt dizzy and Keigo thought he was tired. He thought herbs would help him recover. He ate one, but it only made him feel worse. He lost control of his body and began to fall, not understanding what was happening and why he could not move. He lost consciousness and then opened his eyes and saw Ash. He jumped up and was surprised. He looked around and asked where he was. Sarasa came up to him and said something. She pointed to the grass and said that it was poison and shouldn't be eaten. Keigo realized that he was wrong. He thought that Margit and Juno were probably tired too, but despite this they were able to carry him there. He was very sorry for this. He apologized to them. Keigo slept for about 6 hours and they spent that time looking after Ash and Renante. He was worried because he had caused trouble again. Sarasa handed him some tea for which he thanked her. All he wanted to say was that they were very kind. After that he said goodbye to them and said that he was fine. Keigo was a little surprised when he found out that it was a hotel. He was quite sure that it was Sarasa's room. He sighed and said that he still had to thank those three. He rode his cart in complete silence and looked around. He thought that he should stay away from the forest, but they had already destroyed their place of residence. He didn't know when he would be able to resist them again. He remembered the grass he had eaten. He assessed it and found out it was green anesthetic grass. At that moment he understood everything. He smiled looking at her. After a while he exclaimed that he was almost done. He said that he should not cook the prey until the poison was out of her body, but before that he had other things to do. The goblin tried to attack Keigo with loud cries, who used the fortress and easily defended himself. By not honing his skills and letting everything slide, he won't be able to be useful when he's taken into the dungeon again. The goblin was so unhappy with the fight with Keigo that he turned pale, turned around and left there with loud and dissatisfied cries. Keigo said that he doesn't chase those who run away themselves. He was happy because he felt that he was becoming stronger. Suddenly he remembered that he had not been attacked by wolves recently. He looked at Ash and stroked him. After a while Keigo finished making the blade. He was glad that he had finally finished the fire daggers. He still had a couple of things to sell. Even before that they had dried the venison. As a thank you he decided to take Ash to the city. He came to the guild. Margit said he buys everything. He thought that the equipment was a very popular product and he bought it every time. Margot continued to stand even after the purchase. He pointed to the boys' other things. Keigo said he wanted to sell them to Sarah's. Margot wanted to buy everything and sell it to Sarah's. Keigo wondered if Margot wanted to buy everything from him in bulk and then sell it. However, he didn't really care and he sold it all. Afterwards he laughed and said he had a drink. Margit smiled. He went into the building and closed the shop. Keigo was surprised. He couldn't say for sure, but he felt that Margot wasn't a very responsible person. Suddenly Juno came out. Keigo was surprised. They said something and then Sarasa came. They drank together. The girl said she would bring chicken with vegetables. Keigo thanked the guys for their hospitality and wondered if this was a chicken from another world. The guys said that the chicken kebabs were almost ready. Keigo drank and thought about how he had experienced a lot when he came to this world. Even though they were living side by side with death, he could still smile with confidence like these three. He looked at Ash's hungry face and thought about confidence. He gave the wolf cub a treat. He thought that he felt safe here after all, and that was good. The sky without high-rise buildings, strewn with stars and a bright moon, is truly beautiful. In the morning he thought that probably because he had slept in the cart the day before, his whole body ached. He was with Ash, so everything was fine. He looked at the cute wolf cub and then said that before coming home, they need to get some water for a bath. They got water pretty quickly. Keigo said he got them water and they could head out. Suddenly Ash started barking. Keigo looked to the side and saw a merman standing in front of a huge snake. He was scared, not understanding what kind of monster it was, because compared to it, the merman looked like a child. Ash barked again and Keigo quickly closed the wolf cub's mouth. He thought that they should leave before they were noticed. Suddenly he heard a loud noise. In an instant, the snake used a powerful attack on the merman, causing the monster to scream. Keigo turned pale and rushed towards the carriage, wanting to escape. They rushed to leave in the cart, but on the way the guy's bathtub fell out. He turned around, but now it was not so important. When he returned home, he said it was impossible. He cried because he had lost his bathtub. Keigo didn't know what to do now. No matter what monster the guy encountered, the hero from RPG games couldn't defeat any of them. Keigo looked out into the street and was glad that there was no one there. He was a farmer and couldn't do anything to them, and if so, he knew where the average person could go. He drew a picture and asked what kind of animal it was. He asked the guild for help. The man looked at him in surprise and asked if it was a snake. Keigo assumed it was. He placed an order to tame a snake. This huge monster in this world was called a snake. Keigo thought that if this reptile was a snake, then he would have to rely on someone else's help. He hoped that someone would be found who would catch this snake. He put a reward of 50 gold coins, and now his order to tame the snake was accepted. Keigo was driving home and thinking that he shouldn't take on something he couldn't do on his own. This was an important aspect of survival. After all, life was more important than useless attempts. He will do what only he is capable of. At night, he dug a large hole. A couple of days later he finished. He was tired, but he had only dug a trench. But at least it was better than doing nothing at all. He was lucky, after all, because a group of skilled adventurers responded to his ad. They even found and returned his bathtub. It's right to contact the Adventurers Guild for such matters. Keigo didn't want cockatrices or hellhounds to attack his home from the forest. From now on, he decided to seek help from them for protection. He returned to the pond with Ash and said how long it had been since they had been there. The boy told the wolf cub that he would be there soon to unload the bathtub. Noticing Ash's movements, he asked what was wrong. Ash growled and Keigo knew something was going to happen again. A merman burst out of the water, and Keigo was glad it was just him. He didn't want to get into a fight, but if it was a merman, he could handle it. He pulled the bowstring. Moreover, he was interested in trying something. He fired an anesthetic fire arrow. The monster squealed and Keigo was glad that it worked. He hit the monster. The merman's head fell and Keigo picked it up. He said that after all, mermans were like fish inside and could probably be eaten. Only its shape was a little strange. He decided to skin it first. As Keigo thought, mermans are very popular as a potion ingredient. He also asked to show him how to properly skin monsters. He could have found out what the ingredients were just by tasting them, but he felt like it would take 6 hours for the anesthetic to wear off completely. He also received a new batch of merman scales, and it's time for him to return to blacksmithing. The daggers he enchanted have a fire effect and are great for survival. However, Keigo was curious about what would happen if he enchanted the dagger with a water effect. He did some machinations and then did an assessment. He received a water dagger. He tried a drop from it and noticed that it was ordinary water. If you stick it into a flask, you can get clean drinking water. It is a pretty handy item in everyday life. He wondered how long it would take to fill a regular barrel. With irrigation for the fields and a livestock bath, he would need a lot of water. But now he had a new source of water. After taking a bath, he said how good it felt after the warm water. He waited impatiently for the bath to fill up again. Ash encouraged him by barking. Keigo took the bag and said that it was time to cook. After a while, he prepared a wonderful dish. He said that he fried it just in case, but even without that it turned out very tasty. There was no fancy drink, unfortunately, but it was not bad with fruit ale either. It was like white fish, only out of this world. There were also various animals and fish by the pond. It was a treasure trove of new tasty ingredients. He tried to stop himself because this was the hunting grounds of the snakes, and if he wanted to survive, he should be wary of such places. He sighed and wondered why he was arguing with himself. It wasn't that important, because what was more important to him was that he needed to earn money for a new order for the guild just in case. He looked at Ash and asked if he wanted to go to town with him tomorrow to sell the new daggers. He explained to the boys that the water dagger emits water, and he would sell 2 to Sarasa and 2 to Margot. The man exclaimed that he would take 4, and they began to argue again. Suddenly, Ash stopped this quarrel. He was able to settle everything, and Keigo was happy. This time, Margot won the argument, and Keigo thought that their quarrels even calmed him down. Suddenly, the guy saw Juno. He was sad. Keigo told Ash that he would finish his business and come back. When the boy worked at a trading company, he often had to deal with foreigners. He couldn't get close to them because he didn't know so many communication words. This communication gap made him feel uncomfortable. And even in this world, he did not dare to get close to people. Besides, in this world, you can build connections without knowing most of the words. It is a comfortable environment for him where he cannot doubt his words. Therefore, he did not really learn new words, because during the conversation, everyone would understand him even without precise formulations. Still, he liked the relationships that he could build now. He was trying to appraise the thing Margot had given him. Hellhound claws could be used for smithing, but he would have to stay home for a while. A few days later, he finally finished the Hellfire Sword and the Hellhound Fist Shield. He added fire resistance to his shield and reinforced it with metal. Now he can fight off the Hellhound. He wanted to test the new sword. He swung it and created a firestorm. He said that this power is too destructive, and now he has a rough idea of its power. He heard Ash bark and saw new prey that he had not noticed. Recently, animals have increasingly been caught in his poison traps. He would smoke the rabbit later, and the venison and boar should be cooked. He noticed that the bathroom was full, and he should take one today. Soaking in a warm bath would help him relax. He ate deliciously. Now he was living a carefree life. In his world, he wondered if he could become a farmer while living his life. The only threat left was from aristocrats and monsters. He liked the happy and non-committal life. Suddenly, he saw a cart. He said that the monsters had been getting stronger lately, and that was why the boys were hunting. Juno and Margot agreed. Keigo thought that they wouldn't take him with them, but they were going to go anyway. Keigo stopped Juno because they needed to give the potions. The adventurers thanked him. Keigo was surprised because Margot didn't go with him. The guy wanted to take a bath with Ash, but a man took it. He saw a bunch of different ingredients. Margot gave them all away. The boy would need it, and Keigo wondered if he wanted to buy it so he could do whatever he wanted in his house. The guy took the ingredients. He told Margot that he needed to go and collect herbs, and he went with him. It made him feel calmer. Suddenly he heard screams. It was a new monster. Keigo met him for the first time, but Margot wasn't surprised at all. Cobalt the warrior and the gray bear, they were serious rivals. Margot was in the bathroom again. Keigo was surprised but didn't touch him, and managed to get ingredients from two monsters. Margot butchered them in the city. He said goodbye and sighed. He and Margot became friends. Keigo loved solitude, and this relationship contradicted his lifestyle. He made many new friends, but when he was an employee of a trading company, he also communicated with people. He had many new things. He lit an oil lamp. He often saw them in the city. In this world, oil lamps glowed from demon cores that could be obtained from monsters. With this core that they had obtained last time, he lit the lamp. Ash was already asleep. If they don't have an encyclopedia of this world, he can make one himself. It would be convenient to carry the book into town. He thanked Margot. The snake was still on the pond. Keigo used his fortress to defend himself. He caught a good moment and then used Hellfire Roar. It didn't work, so the guy swung his sword hard. He won and said that he was already finding it easier to fight the mermans. He looked at the fact that although water attribute attacks worked against fireproof armor, fire attribute attacks were useless against water class. Keigo may try to avoid fighting, but without understanding how attributes and magic work in this world, he simply won't survive. So he decided to experiment on mermans who possess water magic. He will be able to stock up on scales and meat. Suddenly he heard a sound and turned to see what the noise was. Keigo was being chased by a snake. He climbed into the cart and rushed out of there. He quickly returned home and locked himself in there. He was scared. He was so happy about his victories over the mermans that he completely forgot himself and was wrong. He prayed that the snake would not find him and come there. In the end, he was never able to fall asleep. He had to do something, so he sent another request to the guild. He needed to set up more traps near the house. He had already made a request for destruction for the adventurers, and now he didn't know what else to do. Keigo boiled together the Jebel venom and the cockatrice venom glands that Margot gave him, but to be honest, he was scared to try it. But until he tried it, he wouldn't know how it worked. He hoped that the antidote would work. He tried a little, then coughed violently and drank the antidote. Ash barked loudly at this time. The boy fell down, coughing violently. He tried to raise his hand to drink the antidote. He jumped up, saying that he was alive. He then assessed it and found out it was Donner poison, which was highly toxic. Even a drop on his tongue could kill him. He hugged Ash and said that he made him worry, and the wolf cub was his savior. He didn't know if this poison would help scare away the monster. Keigo could only hope that it would work. It was far from perfect, but it was better. He had collected traps, medicine, and more. He has already prepared all possible protective measures. His head was still spinning. He just hoped the monster wouldn't show up there. Keigo lay with his eyes open and thought that this was strange. He couldn't sleep. His body wouldn't obey him, but he had to feed Ash. Suddenly, the wolf cub barked. Keigo had a bad feeling about this, but he had to check it out. He went out and saw the snake standing right in front of the house. He thought he was going to die. But suddenly adventurers appeared. He didn't understand anything. They cast spells to help each other in battle. The guy stood there and couldn't understand what was happening. They continued the battle. If Keigo knew anything, it was that he was no good and was better off leaving the hard work to them. The snake attacked one man, causing him to scream. The healer girl immediately cured him. The snake almost ate the man. The man thanked the girl, after which they began to attack again. They created a huge storm with which they were able to defeat the monster. They finished and said they did a good job. They helped Keigo up and he thanked them. He was saved. He thought that it was not in vain that he made a request to the guild. He saw them off. They were able to challenge the snake, and he had just witnessed perfect cooperation. Later, Keigo got out of bed, noting that he was now able to sleep. He went outside and saw the destruction. The guy caught himself thinking that this was not a dream. He sighed, looking at the complete mess, because all his means of self-defense were completely useless. He was on the verge of life and death. He lit a fire, thinking that he and Ash were still alive. Suddenly, he heard someone calling him. He looked up to see Margot and Juno looking extremely worried. He realized that they seemed to have found out about the snake in the guild, and that was why they came, because they were worried about him. He smiled and said that as they could see he was fine. They hugged him, saying that it was great. Later, Margit was taking a bath again, and Juno brought the guy a drink. Keigo thought that they had certainly disturbed his peaceful time. But maybe it wasn't all that bad. He looked at the high sky with a smile. Ash barked loudly as the boys gathered herbs. They raised their weapons as the monsters approached. Today, under the protection of Margot and Juno, they were collecting herbs in the forest with Ash. After finding more information about the targets, they went on the attack. Keigo wouldn't dare go into the forest alone. He was glad he had friends. They killed the monster with ease. Suddenly, they shouted at Keigo to turn around. He didn't have time because he was wounded. There was a cockatrice behind him. He didn't understand what was happening. They had changed their formation to fight the cockatrice. This time, Keigo will be at the forefront with a shield. The cockatrice's eyes lit up, and they knew a petrification attack was about to occur. Keigo's arm was hurt and he tried to calm down. In such situations, you need to drink the potion that Margot gave him. He drank it and his hand was restored. Ash barked a warning, and with the right timing, the three of them attacked the monster together. They defeated the monster quite easily, and Keigo leveled up. He was very happy. The guy realized that he had become stronger than before. But what was more important was that Keigo had his comrades. He was very grateful to them. Later he met Sarasa. The last time they saw each other was before the snake attacked his house. As you could see, he was fine. So they got straight to the point. Sarasa was looking at the goods Keigo had brought with interest. Later, Margot and Juno came over and were also choosing goods, and so Keigo's day in the city passed. He didn't know how to describe it, but he felt satisfied after it. He drove home thinking that he felt like he could spend his entire life drowning in the grind of everyday life. However, he noticed that since he had come into this world, every day had been different. He thought deeply about how overwhelmed he was with work when he worked for the company. Keigo noticed that it had become very quiet after he parted ways with his comrades. He supposed that they would probably have a lot of fun these days. He fell silent. Keigo thought he was quite selfish, but he liked his quiet life. He just wanted to be free. People say that not every adventurer is able to defeat a snake, and if a dragon attacks him, he will undoubtedly meet his end. That is why he was able to survive in the future, regardless of the circumstances. Magic would be a great option for him to master. In fact, Keigo knew some magic all this time, and it was very powerful. Afterwards, he thought about what it was before, because life is not such a simple thing. As Ash snored, Keigo thought about something he had recently realized. He was talented in alchemy and forging. No one else sells weapons and potions of such quality. Even a skilled craftsman like Margot can't make the things the guy creates. He couldn't use fire magic, but he could create it with the fire sword. He can't use healing magic, but he can restore health and remove negative effects with potions. It was all thanks to his evaluation skills. Keigo really shouldn't underestimate him. Since he decided to focus on alchemy and forging, that could be his key to success in this world. He lay in bed thinking that in the end, no matter what path he chose, it all came down to just hard work. He sighed, noting that he seemed to have fallen asleep from his heavy thoughts. He looked at his weapons and noted that he also had a bow. Keigo arrived in the city and politely thanked Master Kai for his lessons. The man ordered his archer to pierce the target, after which it pierced the metal target. Keigo noted that this skill increased the penetrating power of arrows. He thought that it seemed like it would be a good help against monsters that wouldn't be affected by a charged arrow. It's Keigo's turn to shoot. Even though he's gotten stronger, there are still unknown monsters lurking around. If he's not careful, he could easily lose his life. He pulled back the bowstring, trying to brace himself. Rather than fighting with a sword in close combat, it would be much safer to hone his skills with a bow. He commanded the arrow to pierce the target. Rather than learning magic from scratch, it will give him a much better chance of survival. Training Luca's skills is the most important thing for him right now. His arrow hit the target, piercing it slightly. He was glad because he knew that it would have been impossible to pierce the target the first time. He thanked Kai and then left. He turned to Dan and said that he would like to create a subordination request. Such requests for submission are quite common. Keigo makes the request when he sees a strong monster near his house. Keigo looked at his bow and thought that it looked pretty shabby. He went into the shop and thanked Margit for her help. He thought about how good it was that he was able to get a new bow. He didn't quite understand what Margit was trying to tell him. The man started to close his shop again, and the boy thought that he shouldn't do that in the middle of the day. He stopped him because they wouldn't drink every day. He apologized, thinking that Margit was so carefree, although he couldn't say the same about the others. He came back saying he could make the stuff once the cockatrice's eye was dry. He finished the petrified arrow fairly quickly. Keigo could already make poison and paralysis arrows, but he needed to separate them from the hunting arrows. Suddenly he heard Ash barking. He went out to see what was wrong. Unfortunately, he saw nobles approaching his house. The man pointed at him and said that he was coming with them. Keigo wondered if he wanted the boy to go with them. He fell to his knees and said he was sorry. Keigo handed the nobleman a bag of money, but he was still angry. Seeing that he was still not satisfied, he decided to go further. He handed another item to the aristocrat, after which he left with a smile. Keigo thought it was close, and it was a good thing he had made some good money earlier. He was also glad to see that Margit and Juno were not with them this time. Watching this dismal march, Keigo felt sorry for these adventurers. He wished them to return alive and then turned around, saying that they had nothing to do with him. After a while, he was able to finish some supplies. Keigo noted that he had not yet assessed the grass he had collected in the forest. He did not like to check for poisonous ones, but he had to. Suddenly, he heard loud sounds outside the house and looked to see. There he saw that one of the adventurers was carrying an aristocrat on his back. Keigo caught him and said he didn't quite understand what was going on. Suddenly, he saw that the petrification had spread so much. He quickly found a Paruna potion and gave it to the man to drink. Then more people started to come in. Apparently, Keigo realized that they were being attacked by a cockatrice. There were a lot of wounded. He helped everyone, gave them an antidote and a place to rest. Luckily, no one died. He thought that it seemed that this time they hadn't been able to reach the dungeon. He, of course, did not want to say this in the presence of the wounded, but he did not understand what they had done in his house. He thought that his barn didn't look like a hospital at all. They apologized to him, but he knew that they were just victims. This insolent nobleman was the one who was the real culprit, and he would have to take money from him for this. The aristocrat was having a good time at Keigo's expense. The guy was angry, but he fed and helped the simple adventurers with a smile. When they finally left, Keigo wished only that they would never return to him. He wondered what had happened to the nobleman's horse. She became a stone statue in the forest. After the incident with the nobleman, Keigo and the boys met again. After learning that he was okay, they decided to celebrate. Seeing how well Sarasa drank, Keigo thought that he didn't expect her to be able to drink. 456. The boys asked him what happened, so he told them how he gave the money to the nobleman and asked them not to touch him. However, Keigo spoke with broken language and gestures, so he is not sure they understood him at all. But he could definitely tell that they liked his story. So his usually quiet night was unusually noisy tonight. But that wasn't such a bad thing. The boys went to bed together and Keigo thought that there was nothing he could do. He left the room and wished them good night. The next morning, everyone was sick from the aftermath of the evening, so Keigo carried water for them all. And so they left. Keigo wished them luck on their journey. He had drunk quite a lot last night, but he felt fine. He thought he had a lower tolerance for hard liquor before. He assumed that using the appraisal skill and trying out various poisons helped him increase his resistance to negative states. Suddenly, the guy remembered about poisons. The new grass he had recently collected in the forest lay there without much appreciation. He picked it up and thought that, according to his experience, it didn't bode well. He decided to lick it first. Afterwards, he was surprised that he did not feel numb and the grass tasted like mint. He put the whole petal in his mouth, thinking that he wanted to feel something. He wondered if he had gone mad. He made an assessment and found out that they were just tea leaves. Keigo decided to treat Sarasu next time. He wanted to dry the grass, but suddenly it started raining. He went into the house, thinking that this was the first time he saw rain in this world. He thought he would work in the forge until the rain stopped. Afterwards, Keigo made the Hellfire arrow and was glad that he had created the elemental arrow. He thought that he had already imbued the quiver with the water element. Suddenly, he thought that since he could imbue the quiver with the element. Afterwards, he was loudly delighted, because he learned that he could enchant not only weapons and armor. He needed scales to make a larger plate. Apparently, it collects water much better than water clinics. He thought that by using this ability correctly, he could do a lot of useful things. He also thought they would be popular because no one had done anything like it. He brushed it off because his goal was to live a peaceful life away from people. If he stands out too much, then no one knows what that nobleman will do. He decided to get back to work. Keigo noticed that Ash was all dirty. He realized that the wolf cub liked the rain. It was very refreshing for the guy. After a couple of days, the rain stopped and he thought about how wonderful the damp earth smelled. Bright blue sky, slowly moving clouds, soft sunlight. He simply cannot help but lie down in such a situation. He has already fed all his animals and watered the garden, and he has already begun to feel sleepy. Suddenly, he saw a cart and wondered who it was. There he saw extremely nervous guys. Margot was shouting his name, and Keigo thought he had a bad feeling about this. He wondered if something had happened again. Margit exclaimed the name of Byron. The boy thought he had heard the name before, and he hoped it was his imagination. He decided to try talking using the writing board. He was surprised. It seemed that the guild master had chosen Margot, Juno, and Kai, the squad that had defeated the snake and him, to accompany the nobleman. He didn't know why this nobleman was so eager to conquer the dungeon. Apparently the monsters were coming out of the dungeons because it was overcrowded and they were trying to reduce their numbers. He could understand it. Keigo also benefits from clearing because this way there will be fewer monsters wandering around his house. However, this man has no idea about the forces required and forces them to follow his plans. He was incompetent. Keigo wanted to avoid this expedition, but since the strongest people in the city were with him, he hoped that everything would work out. It would be good if they could capture the dungeon. He thought it was time to start preparing. And so that day came. Keigo saw the guild master named Shiraku. He looked confident. Since Keigo is not strong, he will be in the support squad along with the healers. He was given a bracelet and he completed the assessment. The decoration was very expensive. Keigo thanked Sarasa for it. Kai looked at him suspiciously. Keigo didn't understand what was with his look and what he wanted from the guy, so they went to the forest dungeon. Keigo thought that everything would be fine because they had many strong people with them. If they were cold-blooded, they would definitely be able to defeat even the snake. They stepped onto the ground at the entrance. Keigo thought it was strange, but they hadn't encountered any monsters along the way yet. They had reached the dungeon quite safely, which meant only one thing. Suddenly, a monster burst out of the dungeon at them. Keigo understood that all the monsters were there inside. Someone screamed in fear. At this time, the aristocrat said that they were advancing and they had to go forward. All the adventurers used their powers. Some used magic and some fought with weapons. A battle of incredible proportions unfolded in that place. Keigo thought that everything was as expected from Kai, the guild master, and other adventurers. Suddenly, a person almost flew at the guy's head, but he managed to dodge. Suddenly, he remembered about the potions and began to run in the rear, helping the others. He thought that at this rate, he would become a doctor. On the battlefield itself, the strongest adventurers fought the monsters, while Keigo and the others helped others rise up to the battle. Suddenly, Keigo noticed that he had run out of all his potions and herbs. There were still plenty of monsters in the area, but they were already at their limit. He turned to the guild master and reported that he was out of potions. At this point, the guild master and the nobleman began to argue heatedly about something, but Keigo didn't understand it. He only wished that they would hurry up and agree to retreat. Finally, the nobleman sighed angrily and ordered the others to do something. From what was happening, Keigo realized that he had given the order to retreat. They had also failed to capture the dungeon this time. He looked at the others and thought that even with the strongest people in the city, they had not succeeded. He thought that the next monsters from the dungeon would only be even stronger. He looked at his wounded comrades. At that moment, Keigo gained confidence that he simply needed to become stronger. Ash greeted the boy and the others at home with loud barking. Keigo hugged him and said he was home. Sarasa brought drinks and said they had done a good job. The boy was amazed by their food. He thought that Sarasa must have spent a long time preparing all this. He looked at her and thanked the girl along with the others. The boys began to eat and laugh, which raised the mood in the company. Keigo smiled too. Even if they didn't understand each other, their feelings were much stronger. Keigo worked at night. His next potion was already ready. After that, he fell silent. He looked at his sleeping friends and wondered what they thought his forge was for. He sighed, thinking that he was also very tired. Keigo lay down next to him and wished them a good night's sleep. In the morning, he was surprised at how quickly the night had passed. He wondered when was the last time he slept around other people. He seemed to let his guard down around them. He went out, thinking it was breakfast time. Suddenly, he saw a man at the entrance. It was the guild master. He greeted Keigo. The boy thanked the man for his work. The guild master handed over bags of money that Keigo couldn't even hold. This bag was filled to the brim with gold coins. He made an assessment and found out that it was compensation and reward. He thought he understood what the master wanted to say. He thanked the man. Afterwards, the master gave him a few more bags and told him about Margot and Juno. Keigo said he would give them the money. The bags were heavy. The man's hair seemed to have gone gray. He assumed it was because of the aristocrat. Keigo woke up the others. The guy said that in such situations you need to drink tea. Keigo said it was a good job. After a while, he got ready to leave. Keigo thought that the master seemed very busy. They said goodbye to him. Keigo hoped that the noble would understand the gist of things since they were unable to capture the dungeon even with such a large group. Everything will be calm for at least a while. They hadn't even had a proper rest, and he was thinking about throwing a consolation party. Suddenly he noticed Juno's strange gaze, which was fixed on Sarasa. The serpent opens its huge mouth. The upper and lower jaws stretch viscous saliva between them. It roars long and soars through the sky with the help of its massive wings. Meanwhile, Juno, Margot, and Sarasa decided to take a rest at Keigo's. Keigo is very happy that the boys liked the beef skewers. He looks at the boys with a gentle smile as they raise their large glasses of drinks again and again. Suddenly, the boy notices that the boys are starting to nod off. The alcohol has made their heads a little heavier. The boy is glad that the soup he has been so painstakingly preparing is ready, and the pot he has prepared for them is shimno soup. They bow their heads in gratitude, and the guy confirms their guess. As soon as the guy confirmed that the guys were right, they all drank the soup at once. Keigo noticed that the guys, as usual, were eating a lot. Now they agreed to meet the next day. The guy wished his friends good night and left the house, closing the door behind him. Keigo is very happy that the soup worked well. Since he had business in the guild, he went to the city with the guys. He remembers the sorceress using a tornado to defeat the serpent. She definitely used the wind. Of course, magic comes with practice, just like the guy's skill. Once magic is learned, the user's skill will grow little by little. The guy arrives at the guild. Keigo points at the board and asks the employee about wind magic. Suddenly, Dojo comes to meet them. The employee greets him, and Keigo immediately recognizes the man. The man passes by the employee and pats Keigo on the shoulder. However, the boy does not think about the fact that Teacher Kai has magic. The employee knocks on one of the doors that was nearby. The boy, hearing the name of Teacher Han, begins to get nervous. The doors open and a man appears in front of the guy, a skills instructor and wielder of dark magic Khan. He is a noble man, and it seems he has one artificial eye. The boy thinks that Master Han must have been through many wars and battles. Keigo asks Master Han to teach him something too. In response to the request, the teacher simply raises his palm. He calls upon the wind, and suddenly, a second later, a huge wind with destructive force appears in the direction from his palm to the dummy. Keigo is amazed by this blow. He thinks it's cool, but he's still not experienced enough to do it. The guy decides to start by imagining images in his head. In his mind, he imagines the wind as a typhoon and calls it. Keigo extends his palm forward and closes his eyes, calling the wind. After half a day of practice, Keigo finally succeeded. One of the employees sincerely congratulated him. Now Keigo has learned magic. However, the guy understands that his magic is too weak at this moment, and he needs to study even more. The pet happily caresses itself in the gusts of a gentle breeze. From pleasure, he stuck out his tongue and closed his eyes. Keigo thought that if he practiced without stopping, he would definitely become stronger. After all, he could drink the potions he made himself. The boy promised himself that he would give it his all. He stretched out his hand and called upon the wind. The boy smirks. Does his pet Ash really like the breeze he summons? Suddenly, a sound comes from around the corner of the house. Keigo looks out and wonders who got into the yard this time. As it turns out, a blue wolf was lying there. Keigo was about to shoot when suddenly, his pet stood right in front of the arrow. Ash looked at his master pitifully and wanted to bark to protect the poor wolf that had fallen into the trap. Keigo lets go of the bow and looks at the pet with pity. He remembers that the wolf is the same species as Ash. The guy agrees not to harm the animal because he thinks that the wolf does not seem hostile at all. The boy pulls the wolf's paw out of the trap and bandages the wound. Keigo says that everything is fine. He lets the beast go and asks it not to come again. The beast happily walks away, wagging its tail. Evening comes. The guy listens to his head with the wind, which he can now call upon. Keigo understands that if he calls upon the wind correctly and uses it, he can dry his hair. He asks Ash if he really likes the breeze that much. Keigo looks at the bracelet that was lying near his pet. This reminds the guy that he did not thank Sarasa for the bracelet. Keigo puts the bracelet on his wrist and thinks that he should have invited Juno as well. Since the guy was here, it's easier for him to navigate. The tavern with the bar is on the floor below. First, Keigo needs to go to the counter. The guy and the girl at the bar are talking about something. Keigo notices the customer leaving and thinks that he might be disturbing. The girl happily greets Keigo. Keigo shows a tablet, says that he is Juno's friend, and asks the girl where his room is. The girl in a beautiful dress answers that his friend is in room 202. The guy is happy that the girl understood him well. Juno's room was on the second floor. Keigo knocks on the door of room 202. He asks the owner if he is inside. A friend's voice is heard behind the door. Juno comes out. He looks rather sleepy and shabby. The guy greets Keigo, weakly waving his hand. Keigo directly says that his friend looks terrible. Keigo tells Juno that she needs to wash her face and shows her how to do it. Juno smiles and agrees with the guy. He went to the sink and started washing his face. The guy guesses that Juno must have been through a lot and it's better not to bother him now. Keigo noticed that Juno was wearing a bracelet. He wanted to say something, but then realized it would be easier to write it down on a tablet. Keigo shows the tablet to his friend. He asks him if Juno would like to look for something for Sarasa as thanks for the bracelet. Juno looks at the tablet sadly and reads his friend's message. He smiles and agrees. Keigo is a little concerned about his friend's condition, so they went to the store to buy some things. Keigo realized that something was wrong with Juno. Juno started with Sarasa's name and continued speaking in her own language. Keigo's friend spoke a lot. Keigo didn't understand a word, but the feelings were very clear to him. Keigo remembers that long ago, when he was going through hard times, he had a silent friend who could always listen to him. It's different for everyone, but among those who seek help, few seek an answer to the annoying question. Keigo and Juno chose a gift for Sarasa, visiting many shops. At times like these people already have the answer in their hearts. All they need to do is talk to someone to tell them that they are not making a mistake in their choice. The guys chose bracelets that would suit Sarasa perfectly. From what Keigo sees, he believes that Juno has already been through a lot. They wrapped the bracelets in beautiful bags and tied them with bows. The boys presented Sarasa with gifts, which even made her cover her mouth in surprise. Even if Keigo doesn't understand what they're saying, he can still feel their pain, sadness, and bitterness. That'll be enough for the guy. Juno throws his head back. He thanks Keigo for today. The boy turns around and looks at his friend. They go their separate ways and say goodbye to each other. Keigo is already home and is summoning wind magic again. He accidentally hits Ash and apologizes for it. Keigo is very sorry, but this way he can see that his magic is getting stronger. Suddenly, Keigo is called by his friends who arrived in a horse-drawn carriage. Sarasa was sitting there next to Margot. They clearly had another disagreement. Then Keigo began to think about what was going on. Keigo begins to suspect that Margot has not yet thanked Sarasu for the bracelet. That is why the girl was so annoyed. The guy understands that the woman's heart is simply incomprehensible. Sarasa turned away from the boy and puffed out her cheeks. Keigo realized that they had immediately thanked her along with Juno. The boy points his finger at himself and mentally addresses Juno, telling him to thank him. In the end, it all ended with the guys staying at Keigo's for the night. The guy came to the guys to wish them good night. Juno, smiling sleepily, waved his hand at Keigo. From what Keigo heard, adventurers who can't stand that nobleman's behavior are moving their bases to other cities. It must have happened back then in the tavern. Keigo thinks that anyone in their right mind would have gone far away from such a bad person. Keigo, on the other hand, can't sleep. He put his hands on his stomach and just stared at the ceiling. The boy began to toss and turn. He was scared, and now he was sure that he was scared. It turns out that people are creatures that contradict themselves. Before he came to this world, the boy once had a desire to be completely alone. He turned off his phone and did not answer messages. Then he was drawn to people again, and he returned to the way things were. The reason why Keigo wanted to move to the countryside was because he was tired of interacting with people at work. Just looking at those fake smiles made him feel really bad. He thought about never interacting with anyone again. That's why he wants to be self-sufficient. Keigo wants to avoid contact with people as much as possible. Even after he came here, his desire hasn't changed. Keigo's rare interactions with someone would be more than enough. For example, he feels quite comfortable with these three guys. The guy doubts because only he thought so. Thinking about everything, the guy came to this conclusion. However, how can he be sure that the desire to be alone will not manifest itself in this area among the guys? Keigo believes that a person's worst enemy is themselves. People never stop thinking. The more they do, the deeper they fall into darkness. People never want to find an answer. All they find is endless despair. Suddenly, the guy starts to feel bad in his sleep and grabs his head with his hands. Keigo suddenly wakes up and gets up. He looks around and then breathes out with relief because he again thought up a lot of bad things. Keigo is sure that with the start of a new life here, his fake smile that had been on his face for a long time has disappeared. The guy has found something truly beautiful. Now his heart is at peace. The stupid relationship with these three will probably stay with him for the rest of his life. The guy leaves the house and thinks that he will now cook breakfast. As soon as Keigo left, he immediately noticed the guys who were seriously talking about something with those who came. Keigo wondered when the strangers had managed to arrive. It was unexpected, but did this man really think that he and the guys could take over the dungeon with the same squad? They didn't even have time to prepare. It was completely impossible. When someone's anger crosses the line, their face loses all emotion. Unfortunately, Keigo has to force a smile on himself in such cases. He stands next to the boys and smiles awkwardly at the newcomers. One of the men turns to Keigo and says something in his own language. He approaches the guy, who can only guess what could have happened and what they want from him. The man takes the boy by the shoulders and says something enthusiastically in an unfamiliar language. This smile was not the kindest. Suddenly, the man's hand that was touching Keigo's shoulder was cut off in an instant. No one expected this. Everyone was wondering what had happened. The man didn't expect this either. Drops of red liquid appeared on his face, gushing out of his shoulder. Thus, albeit slowly, the wounds in Baron's heart began to heal. He believes that everything will be fine. The previous man went mad. How he too became mad after that incident. Comparing himself with his past self, Baron is sure that his current self is not mad at all. The man's name is Baron. He finally understood the pain that lurks in the hearts of men. The pain of wounds, of losing a comrade, it was all incredibly difficult to bear. Because of his inaction, many people lost their lives. How Baron wants to teach his past self a lesson. He committed so many atrocities that his entire body simply trembled. At the same time, Baron, seeing his son in action, Shiraku cried with joy. The man's son took over the management of the city council. It was difficult to understand all these taxes and other things. Baron is proud of his son. He thinks that he himself is not worthy of being a ruler. Baron believes that the fault lies with him. No one knows this, but the man is frightened by the looks of those around him. It seems to him that the symptoms of the disease are getting worse. In the past, Baron felt no pressure and simply did whatever he wanted. However, now he feels like this burden could break him. The man really wants to see this city prosper. The people Baron knew, the ones he had wounded. He gathered all his courage and told Shirak that he would do everything he could to revive this city. The man's whole body still trembles when meeting people, but he has recovered enough to be able to respond when addressed by name. One day, Shiraku came to Baron and apologized. Apparently, Baron's son increased the tax on the reward for killing monsters and teamed up with the guild to solve all these problems. It would be great if the man's son continued to rule the city, but he is waiting for his father's consent. At the same time, Baron realized how much pain and suffering he had caused his son. The man is sad to realize that he made Shiraku bow his head before him. The current him understands all the pain of a subordinate. When Shiraku bowed again, Baron bowed his head before him in response. He is very sorry. Shiraku was worried, but the man did not let him stop him. As a human, Baron had made many mistakes. One of them was forcing someone to bow their head to him. This was something Baron had only recently realized. Come to think of it, there are still many people he needs to apologize to, including those innocent people and adventurers that Baron sent to prison. The man thinks that many of them simply hate him. Baron realizes that he has caused a lot of problems all over the city. He remembers what Shiraku said about leaving right now. After that, Baron began to feel like Heinrich was avoiding him. Baron doesn't know what he's thinking. The man thought he was going to raise taxes, but he said it was the guild's responsibility to keep the city safe. Is this the result they came to? Although Henry could not do this out of respect for his father, he cannot understand his son. Baron thinks he has failed as a man. If his son becomes like him, using his power to harm the world and causing harm to those around him, then as a father, Baron will have to guide him on the right path. The man is sure that this is his duty as a father. The man is Lester von Baron. Although he has not fully recovered, he is able to walk around his residence and its surroundings. He went around to every neighborhood and apologized. If it were possible, he would like to get along with everyone. Baron finally realized how difficult it was to achieve. That's why he tried his best. Nothing would change if Baron locked himself in his room again. He asked one of the courtiers to take care of Meltichin. Baron admits that he has a very reliable guard. He turns to Tony and thanks him for protecting him. The guard smiles softly and agrees with Baron. Tony says that this Baron will fulfill the duty of a nobleman. The man, in turn, decided to move forward in order to atone for all his sins. The city began to slowly but surely recover. The fierce battle is underway again. Many are worried about Baron herself. The guys grab Keigo by the hand and urge him to run away. The guy's legs don't move at all. Keigo literally begs for no one to notice him. He can't walk. Keigo tried to cover himself with his shield when suddenly a girl comes up to him and says that everything will be fine, bandaging the wound of the aristocrat. A large shadow covers the guy and he raises his head up. The monster flies high into the sky and away. Keigo slowly gets up from his knee and suggests that they seem to have survived. The guys run up to the guy and ask if he's okay. Keigo is okay, but he couldn't do anything. There's something else he needs to do right now. There's a pot of herbal tea brewing. Keigo's friends help him distribute rations to the wounded. Keigo notices that the girl is giving Baron some healing soup. Even with magic and potions, Keigo doubts that Baron's courtiers could have restored his arm. The only consolation is that no one died. The boy suddenly realizes that he smells terrible after the battle and needs to take a bath. Keigo also notices that the fog is thickening. After some time, Keigo comes to the guild and places a bag of funds on the table. He asks Dan to increase the reward. In the guild, however, Keigo decided to increase the reward in order to attract more high-ranking adventurers. Apparently, this flying lizard is called a lower dragon. If it aimed at the guy, he would definitely make ends meet. Keigo wonders how long these days of fear in anticipation of an attack will last. The guy understands that this is not very good. The fog on the road is getting thicker. Keigo is about to get out of the water and hopes that there is no one in the room because he did not take clothes with him. Keigo thought about going to Margot, but if you think about it, it does not matter where he is. If the monster attacks, there is no way to escape. Keigo realizes that it would be better to just stay in the dark. He doesn't even know if it's a good thing that his house was surrounded by such a thick fog. He realizes that he needs to distract himself with something. He tries to draw something, but his hands won't stop shaking. Keigo looks at his watch. It's already morning and he still hasn't been able to fall asleep. The pet pulls the pillow towards itself, and the guy notices that Ash is as cheerful as ever. The guy thinks that it was worth going to Margot's yesterday and having a good time there over drinks. When suddenly, he hears voices behind the door asking whether the owner is home or not. As it turns out, the guys came to Keigo. He confesses to them that they scared him a lot. Margot shows the drawing of the lower dragon to Keigo and rips it in half. The guy smiles, expecting Keigo to understand his hint. However, he doesn't understand anything and waits for everything to be explained to him. Keigo immediately grabs his heart with his hand and says that it greatly eases his suffering. The guys, smiling, hold him so that Keigo does not fall to the ground. As it turned out, this huge lizard did not appear from the dungeon in the forest, but from distant lands, and here it was just flying past. High-level adventurers defeated it in another city. Finally, peaceful days have come again. Keigo's soul felt so light, although who knows what other monsters might attack him. Suddenly, something burst into the house with a loud crash. As it turned out, it was a monster that lived in water bodies. It got lost in the fog and ended up at home. First, the guy decided to evaluate it. The monster turned out to be a fighting bull, a blood-like monster that lives near water in the Lancaster region. Keigo knew they were cows. Juno complains that it was a bull. The boys start laughing at Keigo. In the end, the guy could only agree with his friends. After the fear disappeared, he felt hungry. It's all because of Margot and Juno. They've become too kind to Keigo. Maybe it's because the boy saw a nobleman's arm cut off. The boys were chopping wood, and Keigo was preparing everything to cook himself some food. Keigo realizes that Margot and Juno have left all the cooking to him. It's already deep night. The guy somehow didn't notice that the fog had already disappeared. Keigo suggests having a fun feast of the stomach, because on the table there is beef for every taste, smoked meats, steak, liver, mozzarella, and many other delicacies. The boys were wolfing down the tasty meat. Ash didn't lag behind them and quickly grabbed a piece. The boys sat like that until almost late at night. They ate delicious food and drank drinks, bursting into loud laughter. The boys hugged each other by the shoulders and, looking at the moon, sang cheerful songs. And their pet Ash helped them because the moon made him sad. As a result, the guys fell asleep in one room. Margot sprawled almost all over the room, leaving only a little free space. Keigo said that Margot snores too loudly. Keigo stands up, trying to push Margot's legs off of him, having forgotten about the shimno soup as he wanted to pour it out. Juno and Margot's faces weren't in the best condition, and Keigo realized that they looked terrible. This time, the guy realized that he can't hide his feelings in front of guys. Keigo thinks that they have the type of relationship where they can call each other best friends. The guy grabs his head. The soup didn't help him. Considering how much he drank, it's not surprising at all. Keigo leaves the guys in the room and goes outside because he needs to heat up the soup again. The sun was already shining outside. This time the soup worked. Never before had the boys drunk so much. They all drank the soup, and even Ash the pet got some. After all, the herb has amazing effects. The boy takes the board to write a message to his friends. He wants them to accompany him while he gathers herbs. Sometimes, Keigo feels like the guys consider his house some kind of vacation spot. Keigo realizes that he could use some extra herbs. Margot and Juno read the message and agreed to help. The boys found themselves in the forest. Now they can be called best friends. They are in a forest full of dangers. And yet Keigo's heart is filled with some feeling. Keigo laughs because Juno tasted something bad and complained about it to the guys. The guy puts another basket of herbs on the cart. Margot says that this will be enough for him for a long time and looks away. However, a moment later he calls out to Juno and Keigo. It seemed that there were monsters in the bushes. As it turned out, there was that same blue wolf in the bushes. Keigo decided to help him from afar. He pulled the bowstring and was ready to shoot the bow. The well-aimed arrow hit the monster that attacked the blue wolf. By destroying the monster, the guy thereby increased his level. Keigo did not want to steal someone else's loot, but his shot killed the monster with one blow. The boys returned home. He thanked them for today. Keigo asks to wait for Margot and asks him to leave a request to subjugate the lower dragon just as a precaution. Margot agrees. Keigo waves goodbye to the boys, who in turn were already leaving the boys' house in a cart. Keigo holds ash in his hand and asks the boys to take care of themselves. The buzzing of bugs is calming, and the boy thinks about what he should do now. Suddenly, small drops roll down his cheeks and fall to the ground. The guy, with a smile on his face, wonders why the tears are flowing, because he hasn't even had a drink today. Keigo said that he loved solitude. However, now he found it funny. He understands that once he felt warmth in his heart, the guy will never be able to forget it. On a small table made from a large tree stump stood 3 mugs that the boys had left behind after their meeting. Now that everyone had left, Keigo felt lonely for some reason. The boy understands that all good things come to an end. Absolutely everything, singing, drinking, dancing, the cool night breeze, the buzzing of bugs, everything comes to an end. The boy is very lonely and he admits it. Keigo is afraid that this night, soaked in loneliness, will never end. The boy wonders what came over him. Keigo suggests that it might be due to the stress he recently experienced. He decides to drink a cup of herbal tea. Even knowing the answer, Keigo refuses to accept it. He realizes that in front of people, he is just another problematic adult who refuses to let go of his loneliness. The guy barely opens his eyes. It's already morning, but everything is swimming in his eyes. He feels his body incredibly heavy. He thinks he has a fever. To make sure, the guy puts his palm to his forehead. It really was a fever. He leans his elbow on the table and tries to approach the kitchen. He barely walks and slowly, almost helplessly, says that he needs to cook something for the boys to eat. Suddenly, at one point, Keigo falls, unable to hold on to anything. Ash begins barking furiously, hoping that his master will wake up. Could Keigo really? Okuda has reached its limit. He is the master of the Adventurers Guild of Leicester. His name is Shiraku. Recently, the noble who governs this city has been mistreating adventurers. A huge stream of complaints began to flow through their employee Dan. As the guildmaster, Shiraku is obliged to speak with Baron Sama. Thanks to his position, Shiraku had secured a place on the city council. The guild promised to destroy the monsters and take over the dungeon. Shiraku explained to Baron all the details and risks involved in this undertaking. However, he continued to insist on cacictress's subordination. Shiraku tried to reach him, but it was all in vain. Shiraku could no longer stand aside while many adventurers gave their lives in vain. Baron also did not allow Shiraku to hire new workers. The only ones who can handle cockatrice are Juno, Margot, and Keigo. Keigo is an expert in healing. After all, he can heal petrification. There's also the trio that defeated the snake. They're considered one of the strongest groups in Leicester, and the martial arts teacher Kai. Normally, he wouldn't bother him, but now it's absolutely necessary. At least they can give a decent rebuff to the cockatrice. But who could have known that they would meet not one but several at once? And only thanks to Keigo Okuda they were able to avoid losses. Words cannot describe how grateful Shiraku is to him. Baron offered only 5 gold coins as a reward, and there is no adventurer who would risk his life for such a paltry sum. Dan looked at him with empty eyes, but Shiraku was powerless here. The honor of the guild was also at stake, so using their savings and the guild's savings, they were able to raise the required amount. After this, Shiraku advised Baron to surrender. He tried to persuade him many times. All of this even caused Shiraku's hair to fall out. At this time, a hole began to form inside his stomach, but for some reason, the symptoms began to appear on his head as well. In the end, Baron ordered Shirak to gather the same people as last time. Shirak had to bow his head and follow orders time and time again. Even had to bother Keigo Okuda again. Shiraku sincerely apologizes for everything happening so suddenly. Baron didn't even raise an eyebrow at all of Shiraku's requests. He's very sorry that he's such a lousy guildmaster. When Byron got off his horse to invite Keigo, this terrible thing happened. Byron was attacked by a dragon. With its claws, it deprived Byron of his right hand. Shiraku tried to fight back against this monster in order to protect Byron. As a result, they could only drive the monster away. Since then, Byron has been hiding in his room. According to the butler, he never leaves the room, and food is brought to him at the door. As it turns out, Baron also talks to a horse statue. This state of affairs would certainly have a negative impact on the city. Henry, son of Baron, spoke to his father and soon became the heir of the family. Henry is the complete opposite of his father. He is very wise. Thus, Shiraku's restless heart found peace. His name is Baron, he who lost his hand to the claws of a lower dragon. Everything around him began to frighten him, so he could not take a step out of his room. To pass the time, he ordered his love to be brought to his chambers. Byron thinks that people probably think he is crazy. After all, he is constantly in his room, afraid of everything around him. He began to devote less and less time to his duties. Byron herself thinks that everyone is laughing at him. Whenever he tried to go outside and meet someone, his hand would start shaking. Byron had difficulty eating because of the loss of his right hand. Byron hears voices in his head telling him that he got what he deserved. The man consoles himself with the fact that he is not crazy. He is simply afraid of everything around him. He wanted to remember his name. All his services became cold to Byron. He can't sleep. Byron can't remember the last time he got out of bed. And suddenly he catches himself thinking that he wants to disappear from this world. Byron compares his current and past selves again. He no longer knows which one is real. A man looks into a mirror and touches his reflection with his hand. He finds the reflection a horrible grimace, and then he recognizes his own face. He turns to Meltachin. Shiraku was so worried about Byron that he even found someone who could remove the petrification from Meltachin. After that incident, Byron wanted to live again. Now, even in daylight, he can leave the room to his Meltachin without fear. The man hugs the head of his beloved horse and strokes her cheek. He can finally remember what happiness is. A woman's hand holds out a plate of fruit. The woman holds out a canned peach with the hope that her son will soon recover. The boy takes the plate with his small palm and thanks his mother. It turned out to be just a dream. Keigo had dreamed of precious memories. He woke up with his hand outstretched as if waiting for that very plate of peaches. Keigo looked at Ash and realized it was just a dream. The boy wiped the sweat from his forehead. He was glad that his fever was gone. Keigo had been in bed for days after he passed out. He had finally come down with a fever from exhaustion. Keigo went to feed the chickens. He apologizes to them because he wanted to cook them something to eat before he collapsed. He talks to the animals and asks them not to worry because he is already fine. Luckily, there were no customers during Keigo's absence. Suddenly, the boy, while filling his basket with hay, discovered a flower. To be honest, the guy thought he would make ends meet all alone. The word kodokushi refers to a situation in which a person dies alone and their body is found only after a long time. Keigo feeds the horse hay. He is very sorry that he cannot talk to his mother. He wonders if she was saddened by his death. Keigo looks at the animal with regret. He thinks that his mother would think that he simply ran away. After everything that happened, Keigo realized how important the people around him are to him. He feels useless. He picks up Ash and hopes that Margot and the others are okay. Even though the fever has passed, the guy still needs to rest. Keigo, wiping a few tears from his eyes, decides to relax today and make a couple of potions. A guy is sitting by a fire with a pot. He is waiting for another potion to brew. He turns around and sees a guy. As it turns out, it is Juno, whom Keigo has not seen for a long time. Ash runs towards Juno. Keigo reads the message on the board. As it turns out, Juno is inviting him to a subjugation mission right now. However, Keigo has just recovered from his illness. Keigo bows to his friend and asks for forgiveness, saying that he definitely won't be able to go on this mission. His friend gestures that everything is fine. Juno says something about Lester and writes it on the board. Keigo guesses that it is an assessment. Juno says that there is a doctor in town. Keigo finds out that potions can't cure fever, so he should go to the hospital. In the evening, the boy was putting the potion in boxes to one side. He had made quite a lot of them today. Juno, who had just returned from hunting, was approaching him. Juno brought a lot of plants and berries, all sorts of loot and food in his wagon. Keigo notices that Juno also brought medicinal plants. He guesses that his friend went to the city first. Keigo is surprised that he did not go on missions today. Juno touches Keigo's shoulder and says that he brought all this for Keigo. The guy can't believe his eyes and agrees with an exhale. He sincerely thanks Juno with a trembling voice and tears in his eyes. While Juno was unloading the boxes with the supplies he had brought, Keigo was thinking about how he could thank his friend since all he had now was potions. Keigo came up with the idea of having Juno stay the night. The guy also agreed. The boys look at the moon. Keigo became very calm. He wants to admit that having someone nearby is very nice. Juno sat next to him and drank a drink from a mug. Juno raised his hand up in joy while holding a plate of food in his hand. Keigo looked at him cheerfully, and Ash continued to eat the food with the same appetite. Keigo was glad to have a friend, especially in such difficult times. Juno said that a lot had happened while Keigo was recovering. The guy was very glad that the three had not abandoned him. Only Keigo understands that he should stop being lazy, but today he needs to get a good night's sleep. The next morning, Juno thanked his friend and left. Keigo waves after him. After a good night's sleep, Keigo felt much better. He left the house and began to pull himself up because his body was a little stiff. Suddenly, Keigo hears a voice. A nobleman with his guard was walking towards the boy's house from the side. Apparently, this time the man did not bring adventurers with him. Keigo understands that it is better not to tell the man that the three of them are going into the forest. The Baron bowed his head and asked the boy for forgiveness, saying that he was very sorry. Keigo thought he misheard. After all, Keigo never expected to hear an apology from a nobleman. Tony hands the boy a bag. It is so heavy that Keigo has to bend down to hold it. The boy realizes that there are at least 500 gold coins in the bag. He begins to suspect that Byron wants something from the boy. Keigo smirks. He didn't expect to get compensation for the trouble he caused. It's really unbelievable. The guy remembers his last meeting with Byron. We see that the man has temporarily become quite decent. Byron still stands with his head bowed, the man sincerely repenting for his past actions. Finally, the threat from the nobleman has disappeared. Keigo has no reason to refuse. The guy decides to treat the nobleman and his guard to something first. He asks them to wait a minute. Keigo treated Byron and Tony to the food he had prepared. The food was so delicious that the two men almost fought over the snacks. This scene was very familiar to Keigo. The guy understands that the people who came also liked his food. The guy remembers that Byron's bodyguard is named Tony. The bodyguard told Keigo that the nobleman was replaced by his son Heinrich. Apparently, a lot happened while Keigo was in bed. He notices that one of the dishes is already ready. It was a whole roasted hare with garlic, salt, and herbs. Keigo thought that the man would like it since he was of noble birth. Both men looked at the dishes with great joy. They looked at the food with great greed. Keigo couldn't even expect such a reaction. He understands that cooking was worth the effort. Suddenly, Ash asked one of the men for some food. The men were so scared that they almost turned over the food and the table where all the snacks were. The guy calmly gave the pet a piece and said that there was food for him too. The men wandered into the stables and fell into a deep sleep. Keigo is very tired of this. The guy notices that now the aristocrats look like the most ordinary drunk men. Keigo remembers about the shimno soup. He thinks that he should give some soup when Byron and Tony wake up. Byron and Tony woke up and took a bowl of soup. They were clearly very ill. Keigo knew this would happen, but the men still looked terrible, despite the fact that they were of noble birth. Byron and Tony were moving further and further away from Keigo in a terrible state. They could barely move their legs. Keigo said goodbye to them and asked them to take care of themselves. The guy opens his savings. He thinks that since he has saved up a lot of money, now he needs to think about how best to spend it. Keigo decides to visit a merchant he knows. The boy came to Margot, Juno, and Sarasa to discuss the plan. He says that he wants to put crossbows and stone walls around his territory. After all, stone is much stronger than dirt. So Keigo still has a lot of money left. He is sick and tired of living in a chicken coop, so he would like to have a bath and a bedroom. The boys put their hands in the center. They agreed to make a home for Keigo. With the help of his friends, Keigo met with artisans and suppliers of materials. Keigo also met with a Dr. Kishu-sensei. The guy does not know the level of medicine in this world, but the fact that they have a doctor is already good. Keigo also asks Sarasu to deliver the purchased materials and products to him. Keigo pets Ash and thinks about how he should make some smoked meat after they get home. In the end, he never thanked the guys for their help. Keigo understands that he can never go back to the life of a hermit. He sincerely thanks the guys. At that time, Sarasa and Margot were arguing about something again. Keigo and Juno laughed watching this. A few days later, Keigo had a protective wall, a bed, and a bedroom in his house. The guy was very happy that he had his own fortress. The work was in full swing on the site. Keigo looks at his work. He realizes that it is really cool to make your wishes come true. The guy hopes that snakes and flying lizards will stop looking at him like a piece of meat. Evening comes and all the workers go home. Keigo thanks them for the work they have done. Keigo sees Margot. The guy offers him a drink. Margot asks where Sarasi is and if Keigo has seen her. The guy answers that the girl is not here. Margot stealthily enters Keigo's room. The guy begins to guess that Margot is hiding from Sarasa. He is very interested to know what happened between these two. Suddenly, Margot seems to fly up and stands in a heroic pose in front of Keigo. A few minutes later, the guys were already sitting at the table, celebrating the completion of the construction. And Keigo didn't drink the shimno soup again. It's already late at night in the yard, and the boys are still sitting and singing cheerful songs. Keigo drank with his best friend until he passed out. He thought it was a good excuse to drink. However, the boys were already sitting down and clearly needed to go rest. Keigo and Margot collapse on the floor, exhausted. Keigo realizes that they are simply hopeless adults. Keigo clutches his head in the morning. He is simply splitting. The guy understands that not drinking the shimno soup was a fatal mistake. Margot was not feeling well either. At this time, Henry, the son of a nobleman, studies an interesting weapon that is very similar to a water blade. Keigo is lying on the grass. He spread a blanket on the ground and decided to rest in the sun. He realizes that he has become lazy again. A few days had passed since Keigo's house was built. The stone walls brought a sense of security. That same feeling was what gave the boy a reason to become so lazy. Once the sense of danger was gone, the 10% of energy he usually used turned into a hopeless 3%. Keigo still had gold coins left, so he didn't have to worry about work for now. Ash happily jumped after a butterfly nearby. The guy understands that now he can sleep and wake up whenever he wants. It seems that his old dreams have come true. It was deep night, the boy was lying in his house. Perhaps Keigo slept too much last night at home, so he woke up too early today. There was no dawn. Keigo notices that Ash is still asleep. The boy woke up before everyone else. Even the animals are sleeping too. Keigo pours water onto the board. Precious moments of peace and quiet like this are worth using to collect his thoughts. The boy sits by the fire. He is happy that Juno's feelings for Sarasa are mutual. However, from the outside it seems that Sarasa feels something for Margit. King is very curious if Juno has given up. It would be easier to find someone else. But Juno is a good guy. Keigo doesn't think Juno is deprived of female attention. Speaking of Margot, he still runs away from Sarasa's persistent attacks. The guy thinks that success is just around the corner. Moreover, something else happened to Byron. Keigo thinks that the loss of his hand could be one of the reasons for the aristocrat's behavior. The gold that was given to Keigo as an apology was used to build a stone wall. His compensation simply saved the guy. Keigo understands that he shouldn't hold a grudge against Byron. Much more interesting for Keigo now is his son Heinrich, who runs the city. According to Margot and the others, Byron's son is the type of person who abuses his powers. Even if the guy doesn't want to interact with the nobles, if something happens, he will do everything in his power. Keigo met many people. Secretary Dan, Guildmaster Shiraku, Kai-sensei, and Han-sensei who taught him useful skills. 3 adventurers, a mason. Don't forget about the craftsman who built the house and the stone walls. Then the guy met Dr. Keisha, and also the guardian of Byron, Tony, Taylor from the bakery, and many others. The boy realizes that a lot of people took care of him. In the previous world, he was just trying to survive. He didn't have time to think about those around him. No matter how many people deny it, Keigo can't do without the help of others. The guy himself refused to admit it until the end. Now he looks at his palm, realizing these things, and catches his bitter tears with it. By the way, there is something he can't forget. The guy strokes his sleeping pet and asks him not to change, to remain the cutest fluffy thing in the world. Keigo looks out the window. The sun is starting to come out. The days are getting shorter. Soon it will be autumn and then winter. When the first snow falls, he will have to ask Margit to put up a fireplace. Soon the boy will be able to take a bath and watch the snow. For the past few days, he thinks he needs to take a bath after he sleeps. The boy is looking for one thing in a pile of boxes. He clearly remembers leaving it there. He was looking for a fishing rod. It seems to work. Keigo is going to use a local worm as bait. Keigo went fishing. He took some supplies with him and rode a horse and cart to the river. He cast his line into the glittering surface of the water, and suddenly something bit, creating ripples on the water. Keigo realizes that there are no monsters here. He notices that this is the first time he has sat so calmly by the river. Keigo suddenly pulls out his fishing rod, on the end of which there was a fish. He caught something. Keigo thinks the fish is ayu. He wonders what it will taste like. This type of fish can be made into sashimi if it is parasite-free. The guy's experience cutting fish in Japan finally comes in handy here. Keigo tries a piece of fish. He asks for an estimate. The fish was very tasty. In fact, that was to be expected. The guy doesn't even know how best to cook this fish. It can be salted, fried, or made into sashimi. Keigo enthusiastically decides to catch more of this fish. Initially, there were only 2 fish in a wooden basin of water. After a while, the basin filled up and there was a lot of catch. While Keigo waited for a bite, Ash happily chased dragonflies. The guy, it turns out, fell asleep. As soon as he woke up, he immediately became worried and turned to the guys. He is glad that his horse and Ash are okay. He put a couple of fish on sticks and left them by the river. The boy thinks it's time to call it a day. Keigo calls his horse Rosient and goes home. The guy came back from fishing. Juno, Margot, and Sarasa were already waiting for him at the door. Keigo notices that the guys are already preparing for the party. It is a great coincidence that Keigo caught a lot of fish. The guy offers his friends a drink, and they immediately support the idea. While Keigo and Juno were cooking the fish, Sarasa was playing with Ash, and Margot was laughing out loud into the bathtub filled with water while drinking a drink. Juno says that the grated garlic is ready, and Keigo tells him to add the garlic after he puts the fish on the fire. Keigo is going to leave the salting to Juno, and he himself will be busy making sashimi. In the city, he has never seen raw fish as food. The guy is very interested in whether the guys will like this food. After some time, the food was ready. There was salted fish and sashimi on the table. Keigo called the guys to the table. Juno notices that the guy also prepared shiyaki. The guy expected such a reaction and asked the guys to try the sashimi as well. Everyone is surprised by the new dish. Judging by the boys' faces, it's the first time they've seen something like this. Keigo realizes he should show them a little. The boy stands up, takes a piece of raw fish, and says that he needs to squeeze some lemon juice on it first. Keigo demonstratively takes a piece of cooked fish and says that sashimi is very tasty. The guys did the same as Keigo showed, and in a moment they immediately felt the amazing taste of fish with lemon juice. The boys immediately started shouting about the sashimi and how much they liked it. Keigo is happy that the boys liked the food. The boy hands the plate of fish to Juno and tells him not to be shy because there is still plenty of food. Keigo noticed that Juno didn't look well at all. He asks his friend what happened. As it turned out, Sarasa was spoon-feeding Margot fish, and they were just oozing romance. Keigo, as soon as he noticed this picture, immediately adopted the same expression as Juno. Now he completely understood Juno's emotions. Both of them were not happy with this picture. Keigo asked Juno to take a break and switch to food, assuring him that it would definitely bring him back to life. Keigo tries unsuccessfully to cheer up his friend. Keigo had to force a piece of fish into Juno's mouth. Juno suddenly scratched his head awkwardly and said that shiitake was delicious. Keigo said that it was just sashimi. Morning came. Apparently Margot and Sarasi were going to get married. Considering how sweetly they cooed last night, it was not surprising. The guy expressed his congratulations to the guys and they only sincerely thanked him. Keigo reads a letter from Sarasa. Apparently he and Margot want to hold a wedding ceremony at his house in 2 days, inviting only a few people. This is very unexpected for Keigo, but he doesn't mind. Juno looks rather broken in Keigo's opinion. He only watched the couple from afar. The guest list included everyone who was currently with Keigo and someone else. As it turned out, that someone was Elsa, Juno's girlfriend. Keigo was incredibly shocked by this information. After all, the guy didn't know that his friend had a girlfriend. It turns out that all the consolations that Keigo had given his friend yesterday were in vain. However, Keigo thought that he now had a reason to rejoice, because his 2 best friends were getting married, and it was worth celebrating in a good way. The boys waved as they rode off in a carriage to the city. The friend's wedding is in 2 days, which means Keigo needs to cook something. Since the guys asked him to help, he needs to start cooking. The guys love fish dishes. He feels very sorry for the animals, but he will need their help. So the wedding day of the guys was approaching. Keigo was getting ready. He went fishing in order to catch more fish. The yakitori is ready. All the dishes are filled with Keigo's love and care. Just like this top-notch breaded chicken, he is sure that the guys will like it. The table was almost bursting with all sorts of goodies. The guy only has to cook the fish he caught in the morning. Suddenly the guys call out to the guy. He turns around and notices the heroes of the occasion. Margot and Sarasa are walking towards him. Keigo greets them. He notices that the aura of these two feels different. As it turns out, Juno introduces Keigo to his girlfriend, whose name is Elsa. Keigo says that he is very pleased to meet her. The girl was very nice. She greeted the guy happily. Keigo suddenly realized that he had seen this girl somewhere before. And after a few moments, he realizes that she is the daughter of the owner of the tavern where Juno lives. And suddenly Juno had to meet the mocking look of his friend, who with his whole look said that this girl was too good for him. However, it was all a joke. Juno was embarrassed. Keigo only sincerely congratulated his friend, hugging him by the shoulder. Keigo knows how much pain Juno had to endure. He is sincerely happy for his friend from the bottom of his heart. The boys were serving again with their hands in the center. Now it was time to start the final preparations. The boys began to lay out the fabrics, and the girls then began to arrange the flowers and dishes. The boys were talking about their own things, busy preparing the last meal. Suddenly, Baron's son comes in. He opens the gate wide and appears on the property. The guys certainly didn't expect to see him here. Someone appeared whom Keigo had never seen before. And suddenly, at the sight of him, Margot immediately turned pale and bowed his head. Keigo doesn't really understand what's going on here, but only a savage could ruin such a special day as this. All the guys looked at Margot with concern. Keigo only looked at the newcomer with displeasure. He is a blue wolf, a proud hunter of the forest. One day, their leader was defeated by a high-ranking human. He also took his cub. This man is truly strong and uses strange magic. He would easily be defeated if he attacked this man without preparation. They can do nothing since their leader is dead and his last descendant was taken by a man. Then the pack member has no choice but to look after him from afar. As it turns out, the man treats him well. In fact, he even protects him. In this world, only the strongest survive. Therefore, there is only one thing that loyal creatures like wolves can do. Until the day when the pack members dedicate their lives to their descendant and his protector. As a sign of respect, pack members will occasionally drive away creatures that might harm them both. One day, one of the wolves made a huge mistake. While he was watching the man in ash, he was affected by a strange magic because he approached too quickly. The wolf could not move and fell into a trap. When the wolf saw the baby protecting him with his body, he was so touched that his heart started beating much faster. This surprised the wolf very much. In a world that lives by the rule kill or be killed, this man treated the wolf's wounds. And the wolf was once again convinced that this man was special. One day, when a man and a descendant of the pack decided to go fishing at the lake, the wolves, as always, guarded this territory from wild animals, until a bear came who was going to attack them. The wolves fought hard for a long time to drive him away. After they had finished, the wolves returned to find the sleeping descendant sitting in the arms of the man. It was very touching. After a fierce battle, the wolves were resting away from the humans. Before they noticed that they were nowhere to be found, there were a few fish caught and a wooden cup with a potion in their campsite. The wolves guessed that this man knew everything, and the wolf admitted his defeat. They ate some fish and recovered with the help of a potion. Even now, the wolves still guard this man's territory. They have great hope that their descendant will grow up strong. They are blue wolves. They are the intelligent creatures of this forest. This lovely girl's name is Elsa. She runs a tavern and bar in the city of Leicester. Because adventurers are not very rich, they cannot afford their own homes. That is what her tavern is for, and she can offer them the cheapest lodging in the area. Juno, an adventurer, also often uses her tavern. The girl has known Juno and Sarasa since childhood, and Elsa has been in love with Juno for a long time. However, the guy liked Sarasa. It was easy to notice because Elsa was in love with him. However, Sarasa is in love with Margot, a merchant and a craftsman who forges weapons and armor. They are truly perfect for each other. While Juno's heart is torn apart by pain, Elsa can do nothing but watch from the sidelines. The adventurer's body is his source of income, but gradually he became thinner and thinner. Elsa thinks Juno is a fool. Whatever Elsa told him, she made him eat as much as she could. She tried to get him to talk and said that she wouldn't leave until Juno ate everything. The guy just asked the girl to shut up and leave him alone. Every time she looks in the mirror, Elsa looks at her freckles. Sarasa's beauty is not only in her appearance. Elsa knows firsthand what a good person she is. However, Elsa can't help but envy her. She watches Juno leave and thinks that her love will never fade. Yes, she has given up now, but she believes that one day they will succeed. And then one day Juno wished that Elsa would become his girlfriend. He handed her a box with jewelry. She was so happy that she couldn't hold back her tears. Elsa and Juno had a heart-to-heart talk. Just as Margit was able to let go of his dead wife Isabella, Juno was able to let go of his feelings for Sarasa. Elsa wipes her tears with her hand and agrees to Juno's proposal. She is still bothered by his old feelings for Sarasa. But more importantly, the guy now knows about the girl's feelings. It was the happiest day of her life. The girl gets ready and puts on her best clothes and the very jewelry that Juno gave her. Today is the day of Margot and Sarai's wedding ceremony. She puts on her favorite shoes and dress. Today the girl did not hide her freckles under makeup, because Juno said that he liked them very much. Elsa firmly decided that she would love herself as she is. The wedding will be held at his friend's house Keigo. Keigo was once at the girl's tavern. He left an indescribable impression of himself with his black hair and kind look. And his puppy Ash was super cute. Elsa thinks she might see this puppy again. She can't wait for that moment. While they were driving home with the guys for the ceremony, Elsa was dreaming about the puppy. He is a nobleman from a city called Leicester. Its new ruler is Lord Henry. A few days ago, his father finally handed over the city to him. People called his father a tyrant, so the boy tried his best to show that he was different from his father. The father's madness became the perfect excuse for his son to act. Thus, Henry continued to win over others. His father's supporters, influential people, ordinary people, and this strengthened his position. People called him wise. Henry finally became the most important person in the city. If he calls white black, then so it will be. The guy often spent time surrounded by beautiful girls. In his fertile imagination, Henry thought that power was very sweet. He was ready to do everything possible to hold on to it. If he wished, he could fly to the skies right now. He would like to look down on humans as hardworking ants. After all, he has taxed them from head to toe. In his imagination, he dreams of people continuing to work for him until they die, and being happy that he imposes ever higher taxes on them. However, his father tried to take back the power given to his son when he increased taxes again. Byron said that part of the money would go to support the Adventurers Guild and the army. As a result, Henry was able to suppress his father's ambitions, returning the reins of governance over the city to him. Henry later learned what it meant to hold a gold-bearing goose in one's hands. Now that the problems are behind him, Heinrich believes that he can take his next step. He raises his glass of drink, enjoying the embrace of the women. Heinrich studies the document. After he studied the city's economy, he noticed that some weapon shop was selling fire and water daggers like hotcakes. Thanks to this shop, the city's economy was revived and began to function stably. Heinrich got himself several examples of weapons. He was glad to see them on his table. As it turned out, the owner of the shop is called Margot. Apparently, this man is also involved in forging. Heinrich looked at the weapons greedily and found them quite interesting. Heinrich believes that if this Margit can create such a weapon, then he can't let it go. Now Heinrich is going to collect the fruits of his labor. He licks his lip and smells money. According to Heinrich's subordinates, Margit hasn't sold such weapons for a long time. In other words, the man got them somewhere. When Henry X arrived at the place, he found that the store was already closed. Then the subordinate drew Henry's attention to the side. They saw a wedding carriage where Margit and Sarasa were sitting, which was heading to the wedding ceremony. Henry realized that Margit and her comrades had left the city. This meant that the place they were heading to could extend the light to the source of those unusual daggers. Henry just snapped his fingers. He needed 4 of his subordinates to follow Margit. The subordinates were already ready to carry out the order. Henry sighs wryly. He mentally addresses Margit and says that it is time for him to pay his bills and he will pay Henry double. Henry folded his arms across his chest and smiled slyly. Margit was simply horrified. The guys didn't understand what was going on here. Margot began to explain to the boys. Heinrich began to walk around Keigo's territory. The guy wanted to address Heinrich. After all, this was not his house and he did not dare to enter it. Keigo notices that Margot is surrounded by guards who block his way. The guy guesses that Heinrich is an aristocrat. Suddenly, Heinrich goes and stabs one of the wooden beams with a dagger. Keigo snatches the dagger from his hand and assumes that this guy is just crazy. He's going to sue for trespassing and arson. Keigo doesn't know what's going on here, but he knows that it's useless to reprimand someone who's much more powerful than him. Margot's face confirms it. Then the boy realizes that he needs to use his greatest weapon, sashimi. He took the tray of fish in his hand and carried it to Heinrich. He offers him to try some fish. However, Baron immediately appears in front of Heinrich. Baron speaks rudely to Heinrich. Now Keigo realizes that this newcomer is Byron's son. The boy sees that everyone is arguing very hard over him, as expected from parents. Anyway, today is a very important day, so Keigo asks the uninvited guests to leave and calm down. He calls on those who came to listen to him carefully. As a result, Heinrich and Baron listened to the guy and agreed to try the fish. A moment later, they were amazed by the taste of this fish. Byron asks what it is. Margot answers that it is sashimi. Keigo is very happy that Heinrich, Byron and their guards liked it, but he asks the others to leave some as well. When it comes down to it, the more people at the ceremony, the merrier. Ledger writes on the board to Margot and Sarasa that they could try inviting Byron and Heinrich. Margot wonders if that's okay, but Keigo isn't entirely sure about his decision. Heinrich and Baron saw the invitation to Margit and Sarasa's wedding. The boy, the man and the guards all agreed to come. At that moment, Henry and his son even made peace. When everything calmed down at one point, Margot and Keigo exchanged fists. The man thanked the guy. The boy didn't think he would have so many helpers around the house. Now is definitely not the time to fight. He passed by the room where the girls were helping each other wash up. Keigo immediately felt embarrassed and realized that he had simply walked by and had not seen anything. Preparations for the party were in full swing. Finally, the time came. Everyone was ready for the ceremony. Baron took charge of the wedding ceremony. Keigo brought jewelry for the newlyweds. Margit and Sarasa looked absolutely wonderful at this celebration. They matched each other very well. They walk along the road, and friends and aristocrats stand on the sides. Keigo understands that Margot is not often seen in a jacket, and this moonflower dress perfectly highlights Sarasa's beauty. Margit hands a bouquet of flowers to his girlfriend, Sarasa. He says that he will be her world, and Sarasa confirms this by saying that she will be the earth and Margit will be her son. After this touching speech, the guys exchanged rings and kissed. Elsa and Juno immediately became embarrassed and lowered their heads. They were even embarrassed to look at each other. Keigo looked at them with a sly look. Baron proudly said that he approved of their engagement, and immediately congratulations were heard from all sides. Keigo now saw what kind of weddings were held in this world. He had never seen anything like it. Flower petals were flying around. It was a fairytale atmosphere with Sarasa and Margot as the main characters. Without realizing it, everyone smiled. Then Sarasa throws a bouquet of flowers and throws it up. Elsa catches it, only she almost falls back, but Juno immediately catches her. Everyone was happy about this ceremony. The guards and the aristocrats' guards helped to scatter the flower petals. The atmosphere suddenly changed, and the guys immediately went into the party. The glasses were closed in one big circle in the center and were clinking loudly against each other. Keigo carries sashimi on plates. The guy carries the food and waits for everyone to eat it. The guy notices that someone in the house is starting to make a parody. He understands that this is not very good for improvisation. Keigo has been to such events many times before when he was at the mall. He pours wine into Heinrich's glass. Keigo immediately remembers the contest where people had to play with stockings on their heads. This memory gave the guy goosebumps. The guy breathes a sigh of relief because in such a world there are no such contests. Juno approaches Keigo with open arms. The guy begins to worry because there should be a wedding song at the wedding. Keigo stands on stage. He bows and expresses his desire to sing. The guy starts singing a beautiful song. Keigo is sure that even if you don't know the language, you can feel with your heart what the song is about. Keigo sings the words very soulfully as if addressing guests. Margot immediately hands over a handkerchief as soon as he notices his wife's tears. He is clearly worried about her. Keigo, on the other hand, notices, jokingly considering that his friends have become henpecked. The last words in the song were the names of Margot and Sarasa. The guy congratulates them with all his heart in his song. Everyone started applauding him for such a wonderful song. Even Baron came up to the guy to call for applause for him. And now the ceremony was over. Everyone gathered in the carriage to go home. Margot, Sarasa, and Elsa waved goodbye to Keigo. Keigo waved his hand after the boys. He has a very hard job ahead of him because all the aristocrats in his house have fallen asleep, including her guards and Juno. Keigo can barely drag Juno. From the weight, he promises to throw everyone into the smelter this night. Having scattered all the boys to their sleeping places, the boy went outside. The night wind seemed very pleasant to him. He held his pet in his arms. Keigo looks only at his yard, which is now strewn with flower petals. It seems to him that all this commotion was just a dream. A lot had happened since he'd been here. People sometimes contradicted themselves. Keigo patted Ash on the top of his head and picked up a flashlight to survey the area. He put down a lantern and cut a piece of food. The guy understands that gradually bringing themselves to extinction, people close themselves off from others. Even someone like Keigo was able to find friends. Keigo brings a plate of food and calls for Lyudachka. He leaves the plate and leaves. Having come all this way, he found those with whom he wants to share the best moments of his life. Margit, Juno, Sarasa, and Elsa too. Of course he, the cutest creature in the world, Ash, and many others. Everyone was enchanted by the newlyweds' smile, including Keigo. It was a circle of happiness, with Margot and Sarasa standing in the center. The guy had never seen anything like it in Japan. Words take the form of either a blade or a mirror. Sometimes people hurt themselves and sometimes they hurt us. Just think, the guy ran away from this. It seems to be the guy's defensive reaction. It's easier to solve everything yourself than to rely on others. He came to this conclusion while feeding a horse with carrots. In a world where they don't speak Japanese, in a world where people risk their lives fighting monsters, the light of the blue moon falls directly on a boy's heart. This is the world, maybe it really is a dream. If you think about it, everything falls into place. The guy is glad that all these contradictions are finally disappearing. Suddenly, a light breeze blew, lifting all the flower petals into the air. They circle above the guy as if enveloping his body. He stretches out his hand to feel real in this world. Now he can open up to other people. The guy doesn't know if this is right. Shouldn't he rush somewhere? Should he enjoy what he already has? Right now, Keigo just wants to move on with his life. He is very curious about the contradictions he will face tomorrow. He lifts Ash high into the sky so that he too can enjoy the flower petals that swirl in the air. The guy smiles sincerely, he just can't help but do it. Keigo himself used to be a contradictory person. He strokes the pet's head and suggests leaving the cleaning for tomorrow and just relaxing today. Loud noises are heard from the house where he put all the boys. The boy realizes that they are too noisy. Behind the gate, where Keigo left a plate of meat, a blue wolf has arrived to taste the treats. It's been a day since the wedding ceremony. Keigo has already returned to his usual routine, and someone is still recovering from a hangover. Keigo has undoubtedly become stronger. Now, after training in wind magic, he is going to move on to shooting. Suddenly, Ash jumps sharply behind the guy. The pet began to high-five menacingly. As it turned out, a huge snake was flying at the guy's back. Keigo understands that he needs to do something because he is the only one who is on his feet. Keigo has no time to hide anywhere. He arms himself with a bow and arrow and is about to fire a piercing arrow. The arrow does not cause any damage to the monster, and the guy's skill does not work. The guy thought that the monster had no weaknesses and requested the scanning skill. The monster turned out to be a snake. It has no immunity to toxins, and its poison was turned against itself by the skill Wind Gust. Its deadly poison can corrode everything it touches. The guy's scanning improved several times. Suddenly, blue wolves jump ahead of Keigo so that he could protect the guy and his descendant. The guy could definitely use some help now. Keigo hopes he can counteract the monster's poisonous breath. However, the guy can't yet predict when the monster will use poison. Suddenly, the snake throws one of the wolves aside with its tail. Suddenly, the monster immediately headed towards the guy and opened its huge mouth, in which a poisonous ball was already forming. And Keigo decided to use a gust of wind in an instant. The snake was hit by some magic, but it immediately began to wriggle. Keigo realized that the monster had begun to curl up. However, some of the scales fell off and flew down. Keigo decided to make a sharp lunge with the steering wheel in his hands. The guy jumped and dealt with the monster with all his might, splitting it in half. Now that the monster has been defeated, the boy's level has increased from 14 to 1. Keigo turns around and remembers the wolves that helped him so much in the battle. The boy runs up to the animals and asks if they are okay. Keigo has prepared a potion for them to recover easier. The boy sincerely thanks the wolves for what they always give. He is glad that they are okay. Everyone was shocked by what they saw. The monster's carcass lay in front of the boys. Juno couldn't believe his eyes either. Keigo expected this reaction because he himself was in shock. He brought soup for Juno. After cleaning up the battle site, the boys handed over the spoils to the local butcher. Elsa waves to Juno. The girl starts scolding the guy for drinking too much. Keigo thought that Elsa was angry because Juno left her alone. And then Keigo waves his hand at them because he would like them to finally make peace. Keigo walked away from his friends and returned to his prey. He thought about what he could turn the snake into. Keigo gives money to the master. And yet this is not the first snake in their area. The guy assumes that the dungeons are overflowing again. Keigo thinks that one request for cleansing will be enough. Today the guy was just lucky, because if he was unarmed, he would hardly have coped with the snake. However, now the guy is haunted by a feeling of anxiety. Keigo is going to think about further improving his skills in magic. Keigo once again turns to Han, the sensei, asking him to teach him. Han explains to the boy that in order to improve his wind magic, he needs to train more and gain experience. Keigo would only be able to use higher magic like Tornado if he mastered the basics. The next step was unarmed parrying from Kai, his sensei. The boy understands that it would have been good for him to learn a couple of techniques, but the teacher's movements simply amazed him. Kai-sensei demonstrates one technique that flawlessly combines both technique and strength. The man's blow destroys the dummy. After the technique, the teacher suggests that Keigo repeat the same thing, but the guy is not entirely sure that he can do it. Keigo's face darkened. The teachers don't understand how the boy lived to his age. Kei certainly wouldn't want to end his life learning new skills. Then Kai-sensei calls the boy and he has no choice but to try. Keigo jumps high and flips. Keigo managed to do it on the first try. As a result, the guy got a new skill, a moonsault. Keigo finds this world unusual. He didn't think he would learn so many new things in this place. Now he has nothing to be afraid of. Now the guy has to learn the magical foundations of other elements. Wind, of course, copes well with snakes, but other skills will not be superfluous. Kan-sensei shows the guy a list. As it turns out, there are only 5 elements: fire, wind, earth, light, and darkness. Keigo summons light magic, and a glowing sphere appears in front of his outstretched palm. The boy had no idea that magic would be so useful at night. He sincerely thanked all the teachers. The boy wonders how far he can advance in light magic. Then he is distracted by a meat cutter. The man loads sacks of carcasses onto a cart. Keigo thanks him. The man smiles and shows the snake meat, saying that it is delicious. Keigo does not believe it because he is more than aware of where this meat came from. The guy does not really want to eat this meat, so he asks the man to sell it. The man gave Keigo 8 gold pieces for the snake meat. The boy had no idea that the meat was such a valuable delicacy. The guy decided to take the scales and poison glands. Keigo thanked the man and left. He thinks of selling the scales to Margot, as scale armor is in high demand right now. Keigo opens the doors wide to happily welcome Margot. In the room, Margot and Sarasa merged in a hot embrace. The guy didn't expect to see this at all and chose to close the door with a bang. Keigo smirks and pets Ash. He thinks that it's time for them, the extra ones, to get out of this place. Suddenly, Sarasa runs out of the building and calls out to her friend. The girl looks at the trophy with admiration. She is incredibly happy to see the snake's scales, which were almost as big as her palm. As soon as Margot saw the trophy, she and Sarasa immediately started arguing about who would buy Keigo's product. Keigo smiles and takes a piece of paper and a brush. He doesn't understand why they are silent about it, because they are now husband and wife. The guy, while the guys were arguing, writes them a message that the snake scales will be a wedding gift for them. Keigo understands that it would be impolite to disturb the guys enjoying their honeymoon. Sarasa sincerely thanks her friend for such a gift. The guy is about to leave. He left the scales just like that. Sarasa asks Keigo to wait and take something. As it turned out, the girl was offering to take the red liqueur they had at their wedding. Keigo didn't understand why Sarasa wanted to give something in return, since he had given them a gift. However, it would have been impolite to refuse the liquor, so Keigo gladly accepted it. He climbed onto the cart and headed home, waving goodbye to Margot and Sarasa. Night has fallen, the stars are shining in the sky. Near the burning fire there is a plate with food and the liquor that Sarasa gave him. Keigo certainly liked the liquor, but now he is feeling sleepy. And today was quite a busy day. However, the guy does not understand the reason for his extreme fatigue. Keigo hugs Ash and thinks he is very good. Meanwhile, Margot and Juno decided to test their strength in hand-to-hand combat. Keigo thinks that the fang of the ash wolf made a pretty good necklace. He hopes that this jewelry will protect him from now on. Next up is Keigo's weapon. He wonders what will happen to the item. The guy pretended to listen to the dagger. Keigo thinks the weapon will leak water. Keigo finally mastered the spell. He laughs because it's Margot's job. Suddenly, Juno distracts the guy from his work. Keigo admits that his friend scared him and asked him what he was doing. Juno, with a serious expression, asks Keigo to pay attention to something. The guy makes a gesture, imitating drinking. Then he traces a woman's figure on himself, a little embarrassed. Keigo thinks about drinking and girls. He doesn't fully understand Juno's idea and thinks that he wants to invite him to a tavern. The friend resolutely but still embarrassed said that he would now go home but would return to Keigo at night. Keigo, surprised by his friend's behavior, agreed. He wondered what all this could mean because Juno was not like himself this time. Keigo realizes that they won't be discussing business over a drink. He begins to suspect that something is bothering Juno again. Keigo, of course, also liked to have a drink when he was really stressed at work. It's already dark and Keigo is upset that he won't be able to take Ash with him. The guy went to the city. Margot came to Juno and Keigo, and the guy was already sure of his guesses. Keigo delivered the dagger to Margot, who sincerely thanked him. The man invited Keigo inside, as it was too early to close the shop. As it turned out, Keigo did not want to leave Ash alone and so took him with him to leave him with Sarasa for a while. Keigo told Margot that he would be back soon. Sarasa's shop, Metral Scales. Keigo entered the room and waved to the girl. She didn't look very happy and was rather thoughtful. The guy even thought that he came at the wrong moment. Here, Ash suddenly jumped out of the guy's hands and rushed into Sarasa's arms. The girl was incredibly happy about her pet. Keigo noticed how her mood instantly changed. The guy mentally praised his furry Ash. Keigo asks Sarasa if she can look after Ash, because the guy wants to spend time with his friends. Then he realizes that the girl needed to be told that he and the guys are going to the tavern. Here, Keigo follows Juno's example and shows Sarasa how they are going to spend their time drinking and meeting girls. The guy thinks that it is better to warn his wife Margot, because he and the guys are just going to have a drink without any misunderstandings. Sarasa was clearly not impressed by the idea. Keigo felt very creepy. After all, the smile disappeared from the girl's eyes. It seemed to him that he had said something wrong. The guy gave her a couple of coins as compensation and hurried away. Keigo waves to the boys, thanking them for waiting for him. As it turned out, the guys had already started drinking. Margot put his arm around Keigo's shoulder and led him out. Keigo hopes to have a quiet drink at the tavern. He wants to try something unusual. The boys arrived at the Butterfly Cradle Tavern. Keigo noticed that the room was rather simply furnished. Suddenly, the guys were stopped by a curvy girl in a revealing outfit. Keigo, seeing all these girls, was no longer sure that he and the guys had just come to eat. The guy seemed to have been to such places in his world, and he didn't think that he and the guy would come here. Keigo understands that since he came here, he shouldn't stand aside. 3 girls approached them, it turns out, 1 for each of the guys. Juno and Margot wished Keigo luck with a smile. The guy didn't understand what they wished him luck for. When suddenly a girl comes up to him. The girl offered Keigo to sit down. She was also wearing an open dress and her long hair fell on her shoulders and back. Keigo is surprised that he came across a calm beauty. Keigo and the girl exchange greetings. The guy seemed to be a little nervous. Keigo tries to find out the lady's name and writes something on a piece of paper. He asks the girl if they can communicate with letters on sheets of paper. At first she is surprised, but then smiling without taking her eyes off Keigo, she writes something on the paper. It turned out that the girl's name was Urina. The guy held out a glass to her so that the girl could help herself. The guy began to feel like an accountant from the academy. In order to communicate with foreigners during business trips, he wrote down words like crazy. Keigo realizes that things are much more complicated now. He thinks that his friends brought him here so that he could better understand the local language. Keigo doesn't really want this, but he is much more interested in finding out how things are going with Margot and Juno. When the protagonist turns around to see how his friends are doing, he sees a very indecent scene with Sarasa's husband. He thinks that if his wife saw something like this, she would tear him to pieces. But Keigo sheepishly decides that it is none of his business, so he decides to return to a calm conversation with Urina. The protagonist thinks about what he could discuss with his interlocutor, and hearing live music, Keigo asks Yurina what the singing bard's song is about. The girl begins to carefully write something on sheets of paper, and the main character, taking the sheet from her, begins to apply his evaluation skill. The words of the song say that on a distant mountain in the west, for 10,000 years now, a great tree has been growing, and in its roots is hidden a flower that shines brighter than the sun, Urian. The song also says that the great tree is protected by divine beasts, and this legend says that the nectar of the flower can cure absolutely any disease. It is said that to make the elixir, one must mix herbs such as melane, medicinal plant, Urian nectar, iron grass, and add the hair of a divine beast. After reading the translated song written by the girl's hand, Keigo tells her that it is very interesting. He thanks Yurina for the work she did. Someone told Keigo that girls in bars are the best teachers of foreign languages, and now the protagonist is thinking about the fact that his friend, it seems, was not lying. When the heroes leave the bar, the girls tell them goodbye that they should come again, and Keigo thinks that he would like to come back here again and talk to Yurina again. Returning from the evening, the friends ask Keigo if he had fun, to which the main character answers in the affirmative. The protagonist thought that this was exactly what they wanted, because Margot and Juno were worried about the fact that he, Keigo, hardly communicated with women. Keigo thinks that he would never have gone there alone, and that his acquaintance with Yurina is entirely their merit. Suddenly, Keigo's pet runs out to greet his master. The protagonist calls him very cute and then wonders where he could have come from. Then comes the answer in the form of the arrival of two formidable ladies. They not only drag their husbands along, but also the main character when he tries to go home to sleep with his pet. While he is being dragged along with the others, the hero mentally apologizes to the guys, thinking that it seems to be his fault. Upon returning, the girls close the door and begin to scold their husbands. All the men stand in apologetic poses, and the little animal doesn't even know what to do with itself. Keigo thinks that he couldn't understand anything except the questions because he couldn't understand the language. And even though he didn't do anything wrong, he still feels guilty. While his friends are answering the girls, he thinks that he has the right to remain silent. And then the hero is very frightened by the fact that both of his acquaintances hit their heads on the floor as a sign of their repentance. The heroes made this gesture with such force that smoke came from their heads. This action touched the hearts of the girls, and they are no longer so angry. The protagonist notices that the girls seem to have calmed down, but the next moment his little animal starts to scurry around Margot and then pulls something out of his pocket, and Sarasa bends down to pick up that very thing. And to Sarasa's rhetorical question about what this thing is, all the guys understand that they are finished, and this thought is fully reflected on their faces. The boys bang their heads on the floor again, even harder than before. And Keigo, realizing the situation he found himself in, begins to shake with fear for himself and his friends. He thinks that this is where he will die. Sarasa tells him that he can go. Although Keigo is surprised by this turn of events, he still accepts the gift of fate and begins to leave. Apologizing to his friends as he leaves, he sees the girls flexing their fists. The main character, carrying his pet Ashley in his arms, runs home, thinking that he shouldn't have stayed on the battlefield. Keigo suddenly notices the light coming from the moon. He stops and compares the glow from his hand with the glow of the satellite. The protagonist thinks about the similarity of men's thinking, because even here in the New World, they are also attracted to women and their figures. Keigo reflects on the fact that the first food that enters the human body is mother's milk, and a nursing woman's breast is a symbol of peace and tranquility. He also thinks about the fact that it is possible to reach her only by overcoming a long life path, and men are ready to go to the ends of the earth for this. The main character reflects that the difference between the attitudes of men and women towards this issue is absolutely different. It is simply intergalactic in size. He even compares it to the parable of Orime and Hikoboshi. Suddenly, the protagonist jumps up from his seat, realizing that he has forgotten about the constellations. He finds one in the sky that resembles the outline of a woman's breast, and he names the constellation after them. Then the protagonist suddenly realizes the senselessness of his own behavior. He remembers his friends and says that he hopes they are okay. Singing can be heard from the protagonist's house. Keigo is in a good mood. He notices that a breeze has blown and that it smells of something pleasant. Thinking about something pleasant, the protagonist remembers Yurina. Keigo realizes that since that day he can't get her out of his head. He wonders if it's love, and then, coming to his senses, Keigo decides to stop thinking about it. He thinks it will soon pass, because he has never been in a romantic mood for long. After Keigo notices that it's already late, he remembers that Yurina's tavern is opening. But then the protagonist suddenly tries to stop himself, saying that he has nothing to do with her. He thinks that in her tavern there are many different drinks that he could try and learn the language. The main character decides that going to her would even be useful, And then, while bringing the previously chopped firewood into the house, he decides that he is nothing but trouble. In the end, he went to the tavern and even bought some souvenirs. The protagonist has a nice conversation with Yurina, treating her. The girl is very pleased, which pleases Keigo. The protagonist thinks about how often he visited Yurina since then. He realizes that he likes spending time with her in casual and sweet conversations. But the main character notices that the more he enjoyed the time spent with her, the more attached he becomes to Yurina. He shows the girl various tricks, and she is surprised that he does them even without magic. But there were moments when he, Keigo, returned to reality. He noticed that he was acting a little self-confident. He reflects that while he doesn't brag, Keigo was very popular with women at work. However, he builds walls around his heart. He realizes that he was hurting people who were becoming close to him. Noticing this, the protagonist felt so much pain that he began to hate himself. He could no longer act impulsively in romance with anyone. He wonders if Yurina knows about his feelings for her. He says that she gives everything of herself to chat, sing, and make him, Keigo, happy. He understands that he would never leave her. He understands that she really hears what he is telling her. Through their conversations, the protagonist understands that he is genuinely interested in this city and the world. He notices that Yurina was always interested in what he told her. Although it is possible that this is a technique to seduce men, but he sees that she really enjoys spending time with him. Keigo realizes that he only has eyes for her, and when they discuss the night sky, he thinks that she, Yurina, shines like a star. He understands that he wants to know her more. Showing the girl a piece of paper, he tells her that he wants to know her secrets. He tells her that he will also reveal his to her. And when the heroine responds with consent, Keigo realizes that he would never have thought that the time spent with her would be so fulfilling. Returning from another visit to Yurina's tavern, he thanks Sarasa for watching over his pet Ash again. And Margot remarks to her friend that he has become more fluent in his speech, but that Keigo says that it is all thanks to him. He tells Margot and Sarasa that he is glad that they are doing well. And then the two friends whisper that they can no longer go to that tavern, and then notice the unmistakable cold of the night wind. When Margot asks the protagonist if he wants to light a fire, Keigo answers his interlocutor with a yes, holding Ash in his arms. The protagonist realizes that it seems to be late autumn in this world, and he thinks that the winter will be so cold that diamond dust can be seen in the air. As he says goodbye to Sarasa and Margot, Keigo realizes that he must prepare himself for the bitter cold that is coming. Upon returning home, Keigo gets to work. The protagonist, with a smile on his face, decides what his gift will be. He starts writing a book. The main character decides to transfer everything he saw today into it. He is sure that Yurina will be delighted since she is a curious person. Keigo thinks about whether he should add recipes, but understands that it is not so important. He is looking for something to replace them with. The protagonist signs Yurina's book in his own name, but suddenly begins to worry about what will happen if she thinks that he has no taste, since he gives her a book made with his own hands. After some time, Keigo says goodbye to Margot, who helped him arrange his house, prepare it for winter. The main character, approaching the stove, understands that he will be warm in this fierce time of year. Looking around his house, the protagonist decides that he needs a chair for Yurina too, although he is a little worried that he is getting ahead of himself. And then Keigo suddenly realizes that the time has come. He meets Yurina in a tavern, and the heroes discover an incredible coincidence. They both give each other a book, a circumstance that slightly confuses both characters. Yurina also gave the main character a whole outfit, winter clothes that are customary to wear in this country. After changing, Keigo receives a compliment from his interlocutor that he looks good. The protagonist, with a sweet smile on his face, thanks the girl for the fact that he can now not worry about the bitter cold of this country. Afterwards, Yurina asks the protagonist if she can look at the book he brought her, to which Keigo answers the girl with consent. He says that he will also look at his own. Noticing the heroine's genuine joy as she flips through her gift, Keigo comes to the conclusion that writing the book seems to have been worth it. The protagonist notices that the girl is amazed by the content of his book and that she reads it with great interest. His interlocutor asks the hero to read her book as well. Keigo reflects on the fact that she apparently gave him a grimoire. He notices that it is written about basic survival and ice magic. While looking through the gifts with the heroine, Keigo realizes that Yurina is very close to him. He tries to concentrate when the girl asks him to read one of the spells out loud. The protagonist uses his power of appraisal and then uses ice. Noticing that ice is forming under his palm, Keigo brings his hand to the glass of drink, and the ice falls right into him. And then Keigo Okuda realized that he could acquire skills from the book that Yurina gave him. The protagonist is very happy. His interlocutor is also happy about what is happening. The hero is very happy, and paying attention to the barrel of ice, he now understands how Yurina can make ice in the form of stones. The protagonist then tries to practice this technique without the help of the book. He understands that, as with other spells, the amount of energy and time spent on it brings different results. Trying again, the protagonist realizes that he is doing better. Keigo adds the resulting ice pebble to his interlocutor's glass, for which the girl thanks him. The heroine invites Keigo to read together, from which he concludes that she likes books. He agrees to her offer, and also realizes that he is happy to learn more new things about Yurina. Keigo thinks that even though he seemed to have spent so little time with the heroine, when he is with Yurina, time flies unnoticed, very easily. He compares the time spent with the girl to the flow of a calm river. Returning for Ash, the protagonist thanks Sarasa and Margot for looking after his pet again. The husband and wife notice his new outfit, and asking if Yurina gave it to him, they tell Keigo that it suits him. As he leaves the heroes and says goodbye to them, Keigo thinks that they are both the best married couple, like a warm fireplace. Lying in bed, he thinks that the reason he doesn't want to get close to people may be because his boss told him that being late is as much of a sin as taking someone's life. Because being late means taking away someone else's time, which means he's taking away their life. Keigo realizes that if he thinks about it, he hasn't always been kind to other people, which means he's been taking away their lives. Moving away from the memories of the past, the protagonist realizes that in this world he does not have this feeling when he communicates with Juno, Margot, Sarasa, and Elsa. The protagonist thinks that they may have slowed him down, but he understands that this is Friendship 81. But after that, the main character starts thinking about what happened to Yurina. He remembers his conversations with Yurina in the tavern. He understands that it is not taking the lives of others. The main character thinks about sharing his with her. He thinks about whether she is his destiny. But after Keigo thinks about what he said earlier, he realizes that he said something very romantic. He realizes that the more he thinks about her, the more he has, that he is plunging into a deep labyrinth. He thinks that if he were asked whether he likes her or dislikes her, he would answer that he likes her. He does not understand why love is so complicated. After some time, Keigo realizes that while thinking he finds himself in the city, he really can't understand himself. He came to the city to buy winter clothes before the cold weather hits. Logically, he decides that while he's here, he'll give Yurina one more gift. He decides that's why he's here. Upon arrival at the tavern, Keigo gives his friend a water dagger. The heroine is surprised by such a gift. She even asks him if he is sure, to which the hero answers with absolute consent. Yurina gratefully tells the hero that she will take care of him. The hero is very pleased to hear this. At the same time, some unpleasant events are unfolding behind the heroes. Keigo is annoyed by what is happening. He understands that there are obvious problems with security here. He decides to bring a weapon next time. The next second, Keigo starts to feel jealous. He wonders if the other visitors give Yurina anything. He realizes that his soul is heavy. After some time, the protagonist trains, but he realizes that he still feels weak, so he decides to devote more time to his training. Hearing the scraping sounds of his pet, Keigo climbs the steps to the fence, wondering if there is a monster there. He realizes that if it is behind the wall, the hero will be able to aim at it from above. Keigo is surprised to realize that this is a monster bear, different from other monsters. The protagonist tries to calm down and then uses his appraisal skill on the approaching object. In front of him is a monster, a red-furred grizzly. Unlike gray bears, it has red fur which is not susceptible to fire attacks. Such a monster appears only in the autumn. He decides that if they are fire elements, then water should work well against him. Keigo loads his crossbow with arrows and aims at the approaching red-furred grizzly. Hitting the object with one shot, the protagonist wonders if he managed to take its life. But the next moment, the grizzly rises to its paws in an even more enraged state. The monster begins to emit a strange glow, which makes the hero realize that he cannot see anything. But he understands perfectly well that the monster is approaching him. And when their collision seems completely inevitable, Keigo, suddenly gathering his strength, shoots a crossbow straight into the monster's forehead, causing it to fall backwards. The protagonist managed to defeat this frightening monster. Realizing that this bear was very persistent, Keigo suddenly finds his level and stats increasing. The protagonist is happy with this outcome of events, and he realizes that he was able to defeat such a dangerous bear. After some time, the protagonist cooks bear meat for dinner. As he eats the food, he enjoys its taste, deciding that this is the first time he has eaten such fresh bear meat. Keigo realizes that their meat is much softer than that of earthly bears. Afterwards, the protagonist turns his attention to the testicles of a red-furred grizzly, which can be used in medicine. After making a potion with another egg, Keigo realizes that he can't help but try it. And the very next moment, he, holding his nose, pours the previously prepared liquid into his mouth. The protagonist understands that, according to his own feelings, his body has become lighter. And shaking his head from side to side a little, Keigo decides to use the evaluation skill. The item is Ejiru's healing potion. It has a high level of healing, restoration. The main character becomes interested in the fact that it can even restore body parts. The next moment, the protagonist realizes that this is the strongest restorative he has at the moment. But he decides that he doesn't really want to drink it when he knows its ingredients. Keigo notices that he still has some bear fur left and decides to ask Sarasa to make a quilt out of it. He then tells Ash that they are going to the city, to which his pet happily responds. Having bought everything he needed, the protagonist gives the skin to Sarasa, telling her that he asks her to take care of it. Afterwards, Keigo realizes that there is something else he came to the city for. Approaching the residence building, the main character realizes that he is starting to get nervous. The protagonist is right in front of the entrance to Mr. Bayerun's residence. And holding the reins of his horse, Keigo realizes that he himself is a little nervous. The main character is noticed by one of the guards standing at the entrance to the residence. He greets Keigo, addressing him by name. And when Keigo tells his friend that he came to see Mr. Bayerun, he tells him that he will see the hero off after the changing of the guard. Upon entering the building, the protagonist thinks that he has entered Mr. Bayerun's office, and his friend asks Keigo to look out the window. Keigo thinks that he seems to have a lot of free time, like a retired lord, and looking out the window, he notices him returning. The protagonist remembers that the lord will meet him right after the walk. After placing the body part healing potion, also known as Ejiru's potion, on the table, the protagonist becomes curious as to whether it will have any effect. The new arrivals are very surprised when they learn of the existence of such a potion, and after a short discussion, they decide that the Lord will drink it. The protagonist thinks that the potion is very valuable, but understands that if he hides it, he will be tormented by nightmares. Upon hearing about the potion's effect, Mr. Bayerun drains the flask of the potion to the bottom. And the very next moment, a miraculous healing occurs with the hero. His lost arm is completely restored. Marveling at the Lord's violent reaction to his restored limb, Keigo realizes that he was right, and his arm was indeed restored. And when the Lord shakes the protagonist's hand in incredible gratitude, he understands that with this potion he will no longer be so helpless, and also that it is better not to tell the Lord about the composition of the potion he drank. The protagonist understands that he has finished all his business here and says out loud that it is time for him to return home. But the Lord asks him to wait. He gives some order to his subordinate. And after some time, the main character puts a heavy sack of reward on his cart. He understands that it would be rude to refuse such a gift, so he decides to accept it. As he leaves, Keigo talks about surviving in this world and how he needs to have at least a little money to do so. Hugging his pet, the protagonist shudders from the cold. He understands that it is almost winter. He thinks that there are probably a lot of other monsters here that he will encounter. Keigo suddenly feels a little depressed. He decides to distract himself by thinking that he would rather wait for the snowfall and play snowballs. And then he decides to dress up as Santa and give the gift to Yurina. But in his confusion, Keigo suddenly thinks about how there is no Christmas in this world. And even if there is, it is a holiday that is usually spent with family. As he continues to ride in the wagon hugging Ash, the protagonist begins to wonder if his bearskin quilt is ready. Upon arrival, Keigo thanks Sarasa and asks the girl to keep the change for herself. But Margot's voice refuses him such a thing. Margot tells her friend that they are merchants and he shouldn't worry about money. But Keigo didn't think about it, he just thought that counting change is a headache. But explaining everything is also a headache, so Keigo only thanks Sarasu for the money when the girl gives him back the change. Upon returning home, the protagonist wraps himself in his new bearskin blanket. He is happy that he is warm, and he feels that he will be able to survive the winter wrapped in just this blanket. Keigo muses that since he has 2 blankets, he will put the second one on top. The hero wonders where Ash is, and when his pet emerges from under the blanket, he is delighted by Ash's cute charm. Suddenly there is a knock at the door and someone asks Keigo if he is home. Opening the door, the protagonist finds that Juno and Elsa have come to see him. He realizes that this seems to be the first time they've come to visit him alone. Juno offers the protagonist a drink, and Keigo automatically remembers that he still has some of that bear's meat. Juno and Elsa enjoy the taste of the meat offered to them. Keigo wonders if he remembered correctly that the girl doesn't drink. He offers the heroine some rumino juice, for which the girl thanks him. And just as Keigo thinks about how hard it must be not to drink when you work in a tavern, the pair both say his name at the same time, intending to ask him something. To Keigo's slight surprise, the pair begin to argue over who will ask the question. Afterwards, Juno asks the protagonist if he is dating Yurina. At this point, Keigo realizes that they came to him just to ask about it. And realizing that everything is complicated, the protagonist decides to simply dodge their question. He pretends not to understand what they are talking about. The guests do not dare to continue asking questions, understanding Keigo's mood. And then Juno tells the protagonist that after dinner he will help him prepare for winter. And that evening they did not ask him anything else. While saying goodbye to Juno and Elsa, Keigo realizes that he didn't go to Yurina's last night. But he decides that it's okay since going there isn't some kind of duty. After some time, the main character installs bathtubs in his yard. He understands that he will not be able to collect water when it snows, but he will be able to melt the ice that will accumulate in them. After thinking that 3 should be enough for him, Keigo says that with the water dagger he can fill the baths faster. And telling Ash that they have water in stock, why don't they fill another bath today? Keigo reasons that romance in movies and real life are very different. He understands that it takes effort to live each day. Setting up the tub and thinking about everything that's going on takes all day. The protagonist decides to distract himself by talking to his pet. The next morning, Keigo realizes that he's in for another cold day. He thinks it's obvious. Keigo notices the little squirrels. He thinks they are lost, as the protagonist notices that there are many babies among them. While watching the animals eating some nuts, the protagonist goes into thoughts about the past. Because Keigo had yet to get married, his boss constantly told him that he had to compromise. The protagonist wonders if this means he needs to sacrifice himself for others. He wishes he had the freedom to choose how he wants to live. While doing chores, Keigo realizes that survival is more important than romance. Romance is complicated, and monsters exist all over the world. When the coat rack is ready, the hero thinks about what will happen if the dragon attacks again, whether he will be able to protect Yurina. He thinks that even protecting himself seems impossible. While going about his daily tasks, Keigo can't stop thinking about romance and Yurina. He decides that there must be someone more capable of her than himself. 152. At one point, Margot asks the protagonist if he should keep an eye on Ash. Keigo winces and tells his friend that he won't go there. Margot responds with understanding. A young man says goodbye to his friend. The protagonist returns home along an evening forest road. Keigo wonders why he is so lost. When he gets home, Keigo curls up on his bed, realizing that doing nothing makes him feel so ordinary. He thinks that he wants to break all ties with people. And if you think about it, the only entertainment Keigo had here was taking baths, eating, fishing, and writing. Since there is no internet or games in this world, the main character reflects that in an era where there is no internet and social networks, people can only communicate with each other. However, as he and everything around him develop, they will be able to communicate with each other all over the world. And yet, Keigo decides that at the same time, everything has a reverse effect. The protagonist reflects on how he has become accustomed to the way they communicated with each other before. He understands that they could have exchanged just a few phrases and ended the dialogue. They could have protected their hearts. Keigo realizes that when it comes to romance, the heart becomes heavy, and that in fact most heartaches are due to love. And in his heavy thinking, the hero comes to the conclusion that people prefer to choose the path without pain. 162. Keigo reflects on how everything ultimately comes from our ancestors. And looking at Yurina's gift lying on the table, he understands that when the heart works beyond its capabilities, a person cannot feel love. Keigo decides that the declining birth rate is also due to this, as people simply cannot get married. And when the main character realizes that he thinks a lot about urine, he decides that his own heart is also at its limit, and then his mind begins to resist what is happening. Keigo thinks that even though he loves Yurina, his mind refuses to accept these feelings. The protagonist decides that it is better for him to abandon this idea. He realizes that he is contradicting himself again. He thinks that this behavior of his should be natural, and Keigo decides that it is better this way. In mental anguish, the protagonist clutches his clothes, trying to understand why he is not getting better at all. Keigo's eyes stream with tears as he comes to the conclusion that after digging deep inside himself, he realized that there is no person in the world more unhappy than himself. Margot, Sarasa, Juno, and Elsa are having fun in each other's company. Margot decides to go outside for a while to get some fresh air, and at the same time Yurina runs to her friends. Some kind of trouble has happened to her. Henrik is the lord of the small town of Leicester, and recently something strange happened there. The right arm that his father lost in a fight with a dragon was completely restored. Henrik is burning with the fact that no matter how much he asked them, they didn't tell him anything. But he has a feeling that since they are so stubborn, it means that this is Keigo's doing. Okuda, Henrik bribed the treasurer as it seems he rewarded Keigo for healing his hand. And Henrik learns about the potion for healing body parts. His father's hand has been restored, but does that mean his heart too? But the protagonist also thinks that this is completely unimportant. Henrik thinks that he has never heard of a potion that can restore lost body parts. The hero thinks that if he can sell it to other nobles, he will undoubtedly be swimming in gold. Henrik also thinks about how he will also get those tasty dishes and daggers. And in general, he will have everything he wants. He considers turning Keigo into his slave, making him his potion maker. Henrik says that his father will try to stop him. He decides to strike at his weak point first. While developing the recordings, the hero notices that Keigo has been visiting the red light district. Henrik decides that in such a situation everything is simple, he just uses his greed. With a wicked grin on his face, he decides to team up with the women from the tavern and blackmail the protagonist. Henry comes up with a brilliant plan that he will first persuade the local thugs, then the women, and while Keigo is having fun in the tavern, Henry, will set the thugs on him. They will intimidate the main character for touching their women. And then Henrik decides to lock him in his own basement, and Keigo will brew potions for him for the rest of his life. Quietly chuckling at his plan, Henrik decides that this way his father won't be able to stop him and he will have Keigo for himself. He thinks his plan is simply perfect. Henrik rings the bell, and Jiro comes into the hero's room and asks the Lord's son if he called him. The hero tells Jiro that he can do something for him. He will tell him his plan, and then Jiro, will go to the red light district. Jiro responds with complete understanding, and after some time he is going to put this plan into action. Jiro says that Henrik can leave it entirely to him. The protagonist tries to distract himself by fishing, and looking at his reflection in the water, Keigo realizes that he looks like a dead man. Taking the fish out of the pond, he understands that now everything is as usual, and so every time. The main character does not even know what to do. Keigo sadly realizes that in this world he is not standard in every possible way. Returning home, the protagonist reflects on how he thought this would be a good change of scenery for him. While eating something, Keigo realizes that he doesn't even remember how he got to the river and back. He's just very sad. In any case, the protagonist understands that while he's alive, he needs to eat something. Keigo uses his appraisal skill on the food he's slicing, which turns out to be nutrusa, a fish from the kingdom of Lancaster that has a lot of caviar. He muses that the flesh tastes like cod. The protagonist realizes that if he marinates the caviar in salt and cools it with ice, he could make a cod appetizer. The protagonist, remembering that he has some chili peppers in his shed, goes outside, thinking that if he marinates them together, he can come up with a new flavor. At the same time, Ash barks at the gate. Suddenly, someone starts to stretch out their hands at Keigo's gate and then asks him for help. The protagonist is surprised by such a large number of girls. Opening the gate and letting them in, Keigo asks the heroines what happened to them. But the girls suddenly run into his yard. Thinking about their reaction and Ash's reaction, the protagonist decides that they were probably being chased by monsters. Keigo realizes that he doesn't want trouble, so when the girls start thanking him and asking each other if anyone is hurt, he decides that they better go inside. The main character asks the girls to follow him. He asks the girls to wait for him here in the room and then rummages through the barrel with weapons. But the next moment, something strange begins to happen. The girls begin to undress, and at the same time, all three of them express their gratitude to Keigo for the help he gave them. Confused, the protagonist realizes that he doesn't know what's going on here and wonders if these girls are from the red light district. He realizes that they are looking at him. Turning away, the hero throws clothes on the girls again. He tells them that they might get cold. Keigo thinks that they shouldn't relax too much in the house of an unknown man. Watching his pet, the protagonist notices that he has become quiet. Keigo wonders if there are any traces of monsters on the street. He decides to look outside, but the girls try to stop the protagonist. And when Keigo turns around at their words, the heroines seductively offer him to sleep with them. Such behavior surprises the main character. Keigo decides that they are tired of running. He refuses the girls. And when they ask again, he tells them that this bed is only for guests. The protagonist does not understand what is happening now. He thinks about what the three girls are doing now alone in the city. Keigo reflects that they have their own reasons, and also that he does not blame them. As he leaves the gate, Keigo realizes that everything around is clean and there are no monsters. And seeing that it is night, the protagonist decides that he will ask the girls to leave his house in the morning. After drinking, the protagonist checks the contents of the previously prepared dish, but he remains dissatisfied with the real refrigerator. Keigo decides that it is better for him to go and rest now. Upon returning home, Keigo is tired of going to bed. but as soon as he closes his eyes and relaxes, he begins to hear someone's footsteps. All three girls came to the main character with a small night light in their hands. Keigo is very scared by their persistence and appearance. Under Ash's peaceful sleep, Keigo very politely asks the girls to wait a minute to stop and stop. He jumps away from them and trying to move away, desperately thinking about what he needs to do now. Suddenly, a strange-looking man bursts into the door and declares that these are his girls. Keigo again doesn't understand what's going on here. And the next moment, the protagonist decides that he finally managed to understand the situation. He wonders if they could be from a beauty salon. Suddenly, the man asks Keigo about the location of the potion. The protagonist begins to think about what kind of potion he is talking about, maybe a partial potion. The protagonist, standing in a fighting pose, thinks that maybe this man means the potion that healed the nobleman's right hand. The next moment, Keigo attacks the attacker with his swords of hellfire. The man only manages to duck his head in surprise, and the girls seem frightened. Suddenly, the mohawk on the attacker's head begins to burn violently. And throwing the man with the burning head right into the barrel of water, the protagonist thinks that Henrik must have sent him to him. A man with an afro on his head runs out of the main character's yard. Suddenly, the main character turns thoughtfully to the three girls. They are scared of him, and the hero thinks about the beauty salon. The next moment, Keigo realizes that he doesn't know what to do. After all, he can't really imagine a good time to send the girls out into the cold. Suddenly, the protagonist hears someone calling him. Coming closer to the gate, he realizes that it was Margot. And as soon as Keigo leaves the gates of his own house, he notices Yurina in the crowd of people who have arrived. Their glances intersect, but the main character decides to turn away from the girl. After listening to his friends, the main character thinks that he couldn't even imagine that the girls were drugged. And Yurina had to talk to the beauty salon employees. It turned out that the man with the mohawk was a former bandit from the red light district. He ordered the three beauties he had chosen from the red light district to attack and kidnap Keigo. And Yurina learned of this plan through her connections in the entertainment district. She ran to Margot and told him and the others, and they all rushed to the scene together. The protagonist tells the girls as they leave that they will sleep in the blacksmith's hut tonight. His friends are staying with him. Margot, taking Keigo aside, tells the protagonist that Yurina was worried about him, to which the protagonist says that he understands. After that, the heroes decided to throw a party. Keigo tried to invite the three kidnappers, but they were too embarrassed, so they refused. The protagonist tries the cod dish. He realizes that its taste is quite acceptable, and that it is already late, so they will have to be content with this. He thanks his friends for waiting. Keigo tells them that there is a new dish on the menu today, cheese and cod roe. Keigo with fervor and interest in new things. Laughing, the protagonist tells his friends that they seem to be having fun eating together. Suddenly, he turns his attention to Yurina sadly pouring herself a drink. Approaching the girl, he asks her if she can talk to him outside. The main character only now fully realizes that he stopped appearing in Yurina's store without telling her anything. On the way out, Keigo notices what Yurina is wearing. He realizes that she rushed to his aid in such thin clothes. The protagonist decides that he must apologize to the girl. And putting a fur cape on her, he tells her that she might catch a cold, and the girl gratefully accepts his gesture. Suddenly, the heroes exchange glances. Then, due to the awkwardness that arose, they looked away to the sky, and Keigo suddenly remembered the reason why he brought Yurina out into such cold. But suddenly, both heroes notice with surprise on their faces that large flakes of snow are falling from the sky, and they stretch out their open palms towards it. Noticing Yurina's reaction to the snow, Keigo realizes that the girl now looks like an angel with perfectly white wings. He is a little embarrassed by her radiant smile. And thinking about the stupidity of what is happening, the main character apologizes to Yurina for not going into her store. Suddenly, Keigo realizes that he has to tell the girl right now. He has to tell her how he feels before she disappears with this light snow. Keigo boldly admits to the interested girl in front of him that he can't stop thinking about her. The protagonist tells Yurina that he loves her. The girl turns away a little, which at first frightens the hero, but then she plucks up her courage and tells him that she loves him very much too. Keigo reacts with confusion and a little surprise to Yurina's words. He is very touched. In a small burst, the protagonist shakes snowflakes off his lover's fur collar. Suddenly, Yurina looks at Keigo in fear, and the protagonist only now realizes that he has started crying without even realizing it. The girl wipes away his tears. Holding the fur cape on her shoulders, Yurina smiles tenderly at her lover Keigo. And the main character reflects on the fact that the desire that has so powerfully taken hold of his heart may disappear along with the melting snow. But now, with a tremor in his heart, he understands that everything is fine, and that if Yurina is in trouble, he will be the first to come to her aid, and that whenever she is sad, he wants to be there for her. As he embraces the girl, Keigo realizes that on this fantastic night where angel wings dance in the air, he is ready to become her shield and sword. Seeing Yurina's face flushed from the cold, Keigo tells her that it's time for them to go back. But suddenly, when he's about to lead the girl back into the warmth, Ash jumps out of nowhere. Both heroes are surprised by the sudden appearance of the pet, so they both try to understand how he ended up here. And then a rustling sound is heard from behind the wall of the house, and Margot, Sarasa, Juno, and Elsa appear from there. Keigo suddenly becomes embarrassed, realizing that his conversation with Yurina was overheard by his friends, although they are also a little embarrassed. Suddenly, his friends happily congratulate the new couple, to which Keigo says that he will no longer leave the door open. And after that, they all chatted with the guys about their love with Yurina. Even though he understands that everyone is very drunk, the main character reasons that he never thought that they would have such a fun and happy night, and that everything would turn out exactly like this. Falling asleep next to each other, Keigo and Yurina, a little embarrassed, exchange sweet glances and wish each other good night. In any case, it was getting closer to morning. The main character had to cook rice soup for everyone, except for Yurina, who was able to sober up quickly. However, Keigo had such a hangover that he lay there for 2 whole days. One day after the incident with the beauties, Keigo walks around his own house. He can't find a place for himself. He calls himself a fool and throws a fur cape on the bed. Seeing off his friends, Keigo realizes that they are already leaving. After all, each of them has their own job. But when the friends are already saying goodbye to Keigo, he starts to stop them. The main character covers Yurina's legs, saying that now she will be warm. The girl confirms that she is now warm. The protagonist realizes that he seems to have learned a few words in the local language. And when Yurina bids him farewell in Japanese, Keigo realizes that the girl has also learned a few words in his native language, and he is happy about it. Keigo waves goodbye to his friends. He remains standing even when the carriage is completely hidden from his sight. And only after he sneezes from the cold and snow, Keigo decides to return home. A few hours have passed since everyone left. Keigo realizes that he wants to see Yurina. He realizes that he doesn't want to be alone. And saying that he is very lonely, Keigo grabs the fur cape from the bed and resolutely heads towards the exit with Ash. The main character wonders if Yurina still works at that establishment. He sadly realizes that he is sure that the girl is used to dealing with drunk men. And Keigo begins to feel angry when he imagines Yurina in such an unpleasant environment. But the next moment the hero cools down, realizing that Yurina is free to do whatever she wants. Interfering means limiting her freedom. He knows that this is not a very good idea. But the hero understands that now he is losing all control over his feelings. Keigo knows that he should not be so impulsive, but he can't help himself. And he arrives at the establishment only at midnight. Keigo realizes that Margot and the others are already asleep. He doesn't want to wake them up, so he decides not to call his friends. The protagonist approaches the tavern with Ash. He realizes that he is already feeling ashamed of his impulsive actions, but he decides to think about it later, since he has already come all this way and is already standing here. He realizes that he was so worried that he did not attach any importance to this fact. Entering the establishment, Keigo decides that if there was ever a moment in his life when he needed to act, then perhaps it is right now. At the same time, the protagonist is politely welcomed into the tavern. The main character notices Yurina serving one of the tables, and deciding that the girl needs his intervention, the main character stands right in front of Yurina and the table, pretending to greet her. Covering the girl with himself, he asks her not to be afraid, for which Yurina, hugging Keigo by the hand, responds to the hero with gratitude. But the next moment, the displeased glances of men are directed at the main character. However, Keigo only notices that he brought Ash to the store, and this situation worries him, but only until the girls start to surround the animal, admiring him and calling him cute. The girls pick Ash up, tell him he's cute, and then ask Keigo if he's his pet. He realizes that they don't seem to have had any problems with pets. Keigo notices that his pet is becoming popular wherever he goes, as if he is the mascot of the place. The next moment, Yurina distracts the hero from his thoughts. The girl tells Keigo that she has no one right now, so she offers Keigo a table where they can sit. Yurina returns the main character's quilt, thanking him for his gesture of attention to her. The lovers exchange sweet glances. Suddenly, the mother of the establishment comes to Yurina and Keigo's table, and asks the main character if this is his pet. Then he says welcome. This cool woman is the mother of this whole enterprise. While greeting his mother, the protagonist realizes that every time he sees her, for some reason, his danger sensors are triggered. The protagonist feels that he should not go against her. He thanks the higher powers that it was only a greeting, as he thought she would break something in him. But the very next moment, the heroes hear someone scream, and Keigo tries to understand what is happening here. Noticing the gang of men, the main character thinks that they are the kind of people with whom it is better not to mess, and they say that the girl they need is definitely here. Suddenly, one of the men who arrived points his finger at the main character, which greatly surprises Keigo. The man begins to shake the main character and become aggressive towards him in the local language. Suddenly, Keigo remembers where he might have seen this man. It is the same man with the mohawk who attacked him on that ill-fated night with the beauties. The protagonist asks the attacker to stop his attack, and at the same time he starts rummaging through his bag to get the potion. He thinks that he sympathizes with him about the hair, but Yurina works here. Keigo decides to settle the matter peacefully so as not to cause more trouble. He has little on hand now as he gave most of the potions to the nobleman, but he hands it to his attacker. He asks him to drink a restorative potion, and the man asks the hero if it is the one, after which he immediately begins to empty it. Although Keigo does not know if it will work for his hair. But the very next moment, hair begins to grow back on the man's bald head, and the main character wonders what kind of feeling of déjà vu he is experiencing now. His hair seems even longer than before. The whole team rejoices at the transformation of their leader, and the main character decides that now he can finally relax and enjoy a drink with Yurina. But the next moment, someone from the gang grabs Yurina's hand painfully, causing the girl to scream. They tell Keigo that they haven't finished their conversation yet. He tells the hero that he needs to talk to her first. Keigo absolutely does not like this behavior of the guy, so he takes out his weapon and uses force. At the same time as Keigo, his mother also attacks the aggressor. The man falls on his back with a burning head. The heroes first thank their mother for her intervention and then turn to each other. Keigo asks Yurina if she is okay. The protagonist did not think that his beloved could be in danger. While the bandits try to put out their friend with alcohol, which only leads to the opposite effect, Keigo begins to realize that it is no longer safe for Yurina to work here. The main character confidently tells Yurina that they will leave here together. Addressing the mother of the enterprise, Keigo tells her that he is taking Yurina away from here. The protagonist mentally asks the woman to let him through. The next moment, Keigo realizes that his mother is actually much scarier than all of these bandits put together. He doesn't want to sort things out with her or fight. The main character hands the mother of the enterprise a bag of gold coins. He tells her that there are about 300 of them. Looking confidently straight at the woman, Keigo understands that Yurina is more important to him than any money. The lovers hold hands, and Yurina begins to ask her mother to agree. And the mother is touched by the girl's words. Turning away a little, she tells the heroes that they can go. Yurina throws herself into the woman's arms, calling her mom and sincerely thanking her. And at that moment, the woman begins to cry from a surge of warm feelings. The bandits notice that the heroes are starting to run away from them. Mama tells her blessed lovers to run as she will distract those guys, for which they thank the woman. And hurrying their pet, the heroes try to run out into the street. The bandits resolutely rush after them, but their mother stands in their way, and she clearly does not intend to let the villains through and tells them that they will not pass. At the same time, Keigo and Yurina are running along the city street, the main character pulling his beloved by the hand through the crowd of people. Noticing the heroes, one of the bandits points them out to the others. And Keigo, while running, begins to understand that Ma'am couldn't stop them alone. The protagonist directs Yurina, dragging the girl along with him into one of the alleys to escape the pursuit. At the same time, the bandits are desperately looking for the heroes, not understanding where they have disappeared to. Keigo quickly tries to come up with a solution that will help him protect Yurina. And noticing that Ash is in plain sight, he asks the pet to get out of the way. And suddenly the main character notices a puddle located right on the road. Keigo uses the ice ability, and the puddle begins to slowly freeze. And while the main character is thinking about how he needs to replenish his mana reserves, an idea is born in his head. He directs a stream of wind towards a girl passing by, causing her skirt to rise. The bandits stare at the sight before them, and then, as one, they slip on a puddle covered with ice. This produces a very loud sound. Keigo bends over the bandits to check if they are alive, thinking that they might have slipped too much. But the next moment, Keigo's arm is pinched hard, and Yurina offendedly asks the hero not to lift her skirt. And Keigo, a little embarrassed, apologizes to the girl for his actions. After some time, the lovers return to Keigo's house. The hero thinks that he heard how those bandits were arrested, so now they will not threaten them. Yurina and Keigo return home in a calm atmosphere. The girl holds Ash in her arms and then thoughtfully puts her head on Keigo's shoulder. The hero silently watches the actions of his beloved. After being greeted by the guard on duty, the heroes relax. The lovers exchange glances. Then they kiss tenderly. As they pull away, they feel calm and Keigo hugs Yurina with one arm. That night, all the howling died down, the snow stopped falling. It was as if even nature was congratulating them. Keigo and Yurina ran away. And in the silence, where only the sound of the carriage could be heard, Yurina wrote a letter for her lover, in which it was written that if the main character finds it difficult to be with her, and that if they can no longer bear each other's pain, then he, Keigo, can leave her. Yurina wrote that in such a situation she can of course cry. But Yurina still wants to be near Keigo because she loves him so much. When the heroes are already sitting at home, warming themselves in front of the fireplace, Keigo reflects on the fact that his beloved knows about all his impulses. Yurina was able to accept the main character's misanthropic nature. Keigo understands that the girl was able to accept him, and even prepared a kind of escape route from the relationship for him. The main character reflects on the fact that he doesn't even know, doesn't understand, how someone can be so kind to him. And even when the heroes go to bed after a quiet evening, Keigo does not stop thinking. He talks about what is an irregular factor in this world. Keigo suddenly wonders what would happen if he suddenly woke up one day and found himself in Japan. If suddenly tomorrow he was separated from Yurina and Ash. With pain in his eyes, the protagonist realizes that he is sure that his heart would have been broken forever. He decides that he cannot let the girl know about this. The protagonist realizes that he could not live without her. And from that moment on, their life together with Yurina began. And when the protagonist is immersed in a peaceful everyday life with his beloved, he realizes that he wants them to grow old together. Keigo thinks that when he and Yurina become grandparents, he wants to tell her every day that he loves her. Keigo is confident that everything will be fine for them no matter what. After some time of living together, guests come to visit the heroes. It turns out to be Margot and Sarasa. They greet Keigo, telling him that they haven't seen each other for a long time. While chatting with friends, Keigo suddenly thinks that he would be interested to know how his mother from Yurina's former place of work is doing. It turns out that the girl left her things at Margot's. And when the girls find out that Yurina has been wearing Keigo's clothes for a long time, Sarasa helps Keigo's beloved sort out her own wardrobe during casual and sweet conversations. Margot thanks Keigo for the cheese and cod roe, to which the protagonist replies to his friend that you are always welcome. And then Keigo realizes that he has run out of ingredients and needs to go fishing. Keigo tells Margot that he is going fishing, so he asks a friend to watch the house in his absence, to which Margot agrees while Yurina treats the guests to drinks. Yurina shows Keigo her lips, hinting at a goodbye kiss. And although the protagonist thinks that this is something personal, he responds to his beloved's request. Keigo decides that he doesn't need to relax. And under Margot's whistles, he turns away from his friends in embarrassment, louder than necessary, telling them to watch the house and that he'll be back soon. Going out into the forest, Keigo realizes that it is cold outside. And during the trip, the protagonist realizes that he lacks Ash's warmth. He thinks about what he needs to finish as quickly as possible. Suddenly, Keigo stops his carriage as he notices a strangely wounded animal that was beyond saving. The hero wonders what could have caused such damage to the animal. Keigo wonders if it could be the thorns. And the next moment, a multitude of similar needles fly towards him, but Keigo manages to cover himself with a shield in time. Suddenly, Keigo realizes that a new kind of monster, similar to a sea urchin, has appeared in front of him. The protagonist realizes that he did not expect this. And using the appraisal skill, the protagonist learns that this is a giant echinoderm. This giant echinoderm monster attacks with flying needles, and its weakness is the lightning attribute, the natural enemy of the servant. Keigo wonders if perhaps the number of servants being killed has increased, and that the ecosystem may be collapsing. Carefully leading and protecting his horse, Keigo draws his thunder sword, Wolverine. The protagonist realizes that the monster's spikes are specifically spaced for equal intervals of time. Therefore, Keigo notices that when the giant echinoderm monster fires, it takes a few seconds to reload. Running out of his hiding place, Keigo attacks one of the monsters with a thunder sword. And when it is defeated, the protagonist goes into a new lightning-fast attack on the next echinoderm monster. After a tough battle, the hero's level rises again, from 16 to 17, and his stats also increase by a few points. Keigo tries to gut the echinoderm's insides to find something useful, despite the terribly cold water. Keigo's evaluation skill shows the hero that the giant echinoderm's ovaries have excellent taste qualities. He realizes that although this analysis is superficial, it is very promising. And when Keigo tries one of the torn-off pieces of pulp, after washing them, he realizes that the taste is truly amazing. Keigo reasons that even a purple sea urchin grown on first-class kelp doesn't taste so good. And the one he's defeated, and one of such a large size, is even a little frightening to him. As he loads the monster carcasses into the cart, Keigo realizes that he was so excited that he even screamed. so he needs to get them home quickly before they are attacked by monsters again. But when Keigo brings the delicacy to his home, his friends react with complete incomprehension of what is happening, thinking about the terrifying appearance of these echinoderms. And Keigo realizes that, come to think of it, his friends would never eat something like sashimi. He tells them he'll take the hedgehogs to the kitchen, thinking that they've never eaten such a grotesque creature before. And while the main character is cooking, Margot comes up to him. He asks his friend if he is cooking cod roe with cheese again, to which Keigo answers him that it is completely different and it is much tastier. And since he started, the first dish he serves to his friends is sea urchin in salt water. Keigo hopes that everyone will appreciate its taste. He shows his friends how to eat it properly. He takes a spoon in his hands, breaks off a small piece, puts it in his mouth. Keigo enjoys the taste of this delicacy. Margot, Sarasa, and Yurina, seeing Keigo's enjoyment, pick up cutlery with the intention of repeating the protagonist's actions. And when each of them takes a piece of the pulp into their mouth, Keigo watches his friends' reactions with interest, turning his head from side to side. His friends clutch their glasses, praising the delicacy's deliciousness. And when they praise Keigo's recipe, he says it's time to move on to the main course. Keigo says that you can get the texture of sea urchin by quickly scrambling eggs in a frying pan. The protagonist serves his friends a soft and fluffy omelet with raw sea urchin. As soon as the hero puts a new dish on the table, his friends immediately pounce on it with great appetite. Friends sincerely and very emotionally praise the taste of the dish prepared by Keigo. Watching what is happening, Keigo wonders if his friends are already drunk. Afterwards, the protagonist notices that Ash's face is also dirty. He tells his friends that he is going to take a bath and that he will eat later. The hero rinses his pet with hot water, causing Ash to shake himself cutely. Keigo decides that this is the best time to relax, since winter is the best time to swim outdoors. Keigo notices the beauty of the clear sky and the beautiful stars. He feels his frozen body relax, and this feeling is simply irresistible. Hearing someone leaving, the protagonist thinks that it could be Margot, and without turning around, he asks his friend if the food is over. But as soon as Keigo turned around, Yurina appeared in front of him, completely ready to take a bath. The protagonist is incredibly embarrassed by what is happening. He asks his beloved what happened to her. The girl is also very embarrassed, but instead of answering, she just dives into the bath with Keigo, which makes the hero even more embarrassed. The lovers sit back to back inside the same bathtub in an embarrassing silence. Keigo thinks that women in this world are very persistent. Keigo, embarrassed, leans his back slightly against the girl, causing her to turn towards him. Rising up, she asks her lover to look at her. But Keigo realizes that he is a man after all. But due to extreme embarrassment, he gets up from the bathroom, remembering that they have guests. He wonders who sent Yurina to him. Keigo loudly tells his lover to wait and that he will be out soon. Mentally, the protagonist blames Margot for what happened. In a hurry, Keigo puts his shirt on backwards, and opening the door of his own house, furious, he enters and sees Margot smiling shyly and Sarasa waving her hand at him playfully and a little shyly. The protagonist immediately recognizes her as the instigator. Yurina, offended by Keigo, enters the house. The protagonist understands that she is angry that he left her alone. He understands his beloved's desire not to be alone now. Calming the girl, he tells her that he loves her very much. And when Yurina calms down a little, Keigo notices the laughing looks of his friends. He gets angry at them, thinking that this whole situation happened because of them. After some time, when everyone in the house has already fallen asleep, the main character is sitting at his table. Keigo is thinking that he cannot maintain this forever. He needs to think carefully. He talks about how in another world he was definitely, without any exaggeration, a recluse. And looking at the sleeping Yurina, he understands that this girl is the love of his life. He values her very much. Keigo realizes that he now has someone to protect, for real this time. This is what really matters to him. He realizes that he can no longer pretend to be a lone wolf. However, Keigo is now fully aware that he still has one problem. It is that same aristocrat Henrik who sends his thugs after them. In his reasoning, Keigo comes to the conclusion that he likes this house he currently lives in. But if their location will put Yurina in danger, then that is a completely different matter. Although this worries the protagonist, he understands that they have a lot of money and the chickens are fine. Keigo is immersed in his heavy thoughts. But shaking his head from side to side, he drives away the heavy thoughts. Keigo still decides to stay because he is not alone here. The protagonist decides that when he wakes up tomorrow, he will talk to Margot, Sarasa, and Yurina. Keigo, filled with determination after thinking all night, tells his friends the whole truth in the morning of that day. Keigo told them about how he had cured Master Bayerun's right hand with a potion, as well as about the attack on Yurina, and that the thieves were most likely sent by Bayerun's son, Henrik. And the conclusion he and his friends came to was absolutely the same as the one he had come to the previous evening while walking around the house. Keigo muses that if the aristocrats in power had taken the matter seriously, he would most likely have been captured before he could have put up any resistance to them. The main character decides that he and Yurina will leave this house, with which the girl absolutely agrees. Keigo is thinking about leaving by carriage. Sarasa is very upset about this. Margot hands her friend a sheet of paper. It turns out to be a map of the outskirts of the Kingdom of Lancaster. The hero hasn't needed it yet, but it will definitely come in handy for a quick overview. The hero thanks Margot. Yurina tells her lover that she has never set out on a journey before, and that is why she can't wait. Margot agrees with the girl's statement. He tells her that such a trip will be a fun event for her. And then he hands his friend a piece of paper on which Keigo uses the evaluation skill. A short letter from Margot says that he will definitely go and overthrow that disgusting Henrik, and then come for Keigo. In the meantime, Margot asks her friend to enjoy the trip with Yurina. And the main character, realizing that his friend will really take care of the rest, sincerely thanks Margot. And then Keigo, stretching, gets up from the table. He tells his friends that since they have already decided everything, it is time to pack their things, to which Yurina completely agrees. Keigo muses that the chickens will go to a farmer who knows Sarasu, and Margot will go with Juno, who often hunts monsters. Leaving Yurina and Keigo, Margot tells her friends that they will also invite Elsa, to which the protagonist agrees. Standing on the balcony with Yurina, Keigo also thinks that he doesn't want to cause any more problems for his friends, but he just wants to make sure that they all say goodbye. In between packing, Keigo wrote letters to his best friends, and while packing them, he asks his friends to read them when they are alone. The protagonist realizes that there is one more important thing. He will travel together with Yurina, and while picking flowers, he understands that he must take a step. The main character comes to his beloved with a flower. He calls the girl, and when she turns around at Keigo's voice, he holds out the flower. Getting down on one knee, Keigo tells his beloved that he will protect her from all misfortunes all her life. Yurina is deeply touched by such a gesture of the protagonist. Keigo, with a smile on his face, wonders if he said it well, because in any case, he will never find the words to describe the beauty of his beloved. Yurina gratefully accepts Keigo's modest gift. She tells him that she will love him for the rest of her life. And with tears in her eyes, she tells Keigo that he is her sun that shines every day. The oath Sarasa taught him was spoken at that moment. It means happy marriage, and he also gave Yurina a special flower. Kissing his beloved's hand, Keigo realizes that before they escape, it will be a small wedding just for the two of them. At this moment, Ash runs up to the heroes. The pet barks sweetly, to which Keigo answers him that he is an excellent priest. The lovers exchange glances, joyful smiles shine on their faces. The lovers kiss, completing the marriage ritual with this gesture. And Keigo thinks that after this, he has a strange feeling of courage. Sometime later, Keigo sees his friends. He tells them that he left letters for them. He tells them that he is now going on a journey. The girls embrace sweetly. Sarasa and Elsa say goodbye to their beloved friend with trepidation. The men raise their heads so as not to shed tears from the feelings that have overwhelmed them. The friends say goodbye, thinking about the guys taking care of themselves. Everyone says goodbye, and Margot and Juno say that they will see each other soon. Wishing their friends happiness, Yurina and Keigo set off on their journey. And seeing his friends' sincere tears from saying goodbye to her loved ones, Keigo decides that he will protect Yurina. Sometime after the trip, Yurina turns to her lover. The girl tells Keigo about the beasts that follow them. But the protagonist tells Yurina that everything is fine and that they are with them. Thinking about the animals following them, the protagonist decides that he believes them. And when Yurina asks him about what Margot gave him, Keigo tells the girl that a friend gave them a means of self-defense. Keigo thinks about how, according to Margot and her friends, they have already returned to the city. Looking at the self-defense weapon in his hands, the hero wonders if it is really a slingshot. The protagonist, thinking, decides that he is almost certain that Henrik is hunting him. And talking to Yurina about the fact that he already has experience using a slingshot, he comes to some conclusions. The protagonist reflects on how he doesn't think he'll ever live long enough to regret his decisions, and also how the very potion of restoration should never have been seen in public. And seeing how Yurina deftly handles the new means of self-defense, the protagonist comes to the conclusion that they were on the brink of disaster. But Keigo realizes that there is nothing better than to go on a trip that is not connected to something like that. He decides to take this as a good opportunity and look at the situation from a different perspective. Keigo talks about how dangerous it is for them to travel at night on unfamiliar roads. Their camp is surrounded by those same reliable animals. But the protagonist talks about how, even though they are watching over them, they must not let their guard down. And despite this, he and Yurina happily eat the food cooked in the cold. The main character thinks that this trip is like a honeymoon for them. And when the heroes are watching the stars, Keigo calls their trip a honeymoon on a horseback ride under the starry sky. He thinks about what a romantic situation this is. As Yurina wipes herself down before bed, thus replacing a shower, Keigo realizes with embarrassment that he has not prepared enough, because they are here in full view since the carriage has no roof. After all the evening procedures, when Yurina thanks Keigo for taking care of them and preparing their clothes, the protagonist reflects. He thinks about how he has 3,000 gold coins. With this money he can easily buy a covered wagon. He and Yurina watch the beauty of the moonlit night. Keigo wonders if his friends are also looking at the moon now, and he covers himself, Yurina, and Ash with a blanket, and wishes each other good night together with his beloved. In the morning, both heroes wake up from a loud sound. Jumping up, Keigo starts looking for the reasons for this, and suddenly the main character realizes that it is a cockatrice. Yurina, taking out a slingshot, tells her lover that she will cover him. Keigo tells his beloved that it is too dangerous for her and that she needs to step away. Yurina does not argue, she agrees with his decision. Keigo understands that he is no longer alone, and the protagonist tells himself that they will definitely survive together with Yurina. Keigo understands that the monster has not noticed them yet. Stretching out his hand, the protagonist tells his interlocutor that he will now conduct an assessment just in case. And new information about the monster cockatrice appears. It uses the skill of attacking with a magic eye to cause petrification, as well as an attack of poisonous breath. It has a vulnerability to light. And realizing that the weakness of this monster with the body of a chicken and the tail of a snake is light, the main character summons the animals, directing their attack on the monster. Keigo asks Yurina to stay put, and with all the monster's attention on himself, the protagonist uses a light attack, directing it straight at the chicken's head. Watching what happened after his attack, Keigo comes to the conclusion that the monster will now be unable to carry out its attack on him. Keigo decides that next time he will use a poison arrow. And aiming the arrow with the bowstring, Keigo sends it straight into the core of the monster. Noticing the screams of the monster, the hero understands that now everything is fine since his attacks are working. Keigo realizes that all he has to do now is finish off the cockatrice. Suddenly, the protagonist notices that one of his summoned animals is attacking the monster. Keigo realizes that there will be a poisonous breath attack. Keigo shouts at the blue wolf to run, but it seems too late as the animal has already fallen backwards. After cursing, the main character is greatly distracted from what is happening, which is why the monster's paw hangs dangerously right above him. And when it seems that all is lost, a projectile flies accurately into the paw. Thanks to Yurin for helping him with just one look, the hero shouts that he needs to act right now. And the next second, he cuts off the head of the cockatrice with one powerful blow of his fiery sword. Keigo's level increases to 18, his combat stats also increase by a few points. The protagonist thinks that he doesn't care about this level. Keigo leans over the injured summoned creature, asking the blue wolf to drink a detox potion. And when the main character pours it right into the wolf's mouth, the realization of the loss of an ally reaches him. Keigo is very saddened by what is happening. Yurina watches her lover's feelings with pain in her eyes. After some time, both heroes erect a cross on the mountain, marking the burial place of the beast. Keigo says that he accepts that the beast wanted to be with him until the very end, and together with Yurina, they thank the animal from the bottom of their hearts for the fact that the wolf always wanted to protect them. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Keigo realized that he did not feel any weakness. On the contrary, he was filled with strength, as if in honor of the hero's triumphant return. At the same time, Henrik scolds his subordinates for 2 unsuccessful operations, and also for the fact that Keigo and Yurin managed to escape themselves. Henrik asks his subordinate what the hell is going on here. He is told that it was an accident, that he is truly sorry for it. But Henrik says that he does not need an apology but results. The subordinate tells Henrik that according to the mafioso they hired, Johnny and his gang, they themselves are the devils. And also that the man Keigo Okuda seems to be a very dangerous person. And the very next moment, Jill rises to her full height and tells Henrik that he will personally bring him Keigo Okuda and Yurina, and that they will sit at Henrik's feet. But Henrik asks Gil to forget about it and to get on with their business. The subordinate asks the maid to call the captain to his office and have him gather about 50 people. Before leaving, Jill tells her master that he can count on him, at which point Henrik grins evilly. Henrik thinks that since Jill will be present in person this time, Keigo Okuda will definitely not survive today, and that if they take him hostage, he will have no other choice. After all, Henrik has already even spoken to the Church Inquisition about a special torture chamber. Henrik thinks that it will make people feel sorry for the heroes because they can no longer count on a decent life. Henrik wonders what else his father might be worried about, anticipating the possibility that someone might start a rebellion. Henrik explains that they have taken complete control of the city council and have even managed to recruit the influential adventurer Guildmaster Shulak into their ranks. He believes that he is no longer his father's plaything. To execute or imprison the heroes would, in Henrik's opinion, only serve to destroy his reputation. But at least he decides that he can drive his henchmen out of Leicester. And after that, house arrest will get rid of this problem. And for starters, Donnie and the others, he can run his lieutenants out of town. That day, Keigo sent a letter to Margot, Sarasa, Jun, and Elsa. He told them that they were strictly forbidden from reading each other's letters. Margot's letter says that although Keigo is uncomfortable writing to him, he did it anyway. The protagonist wrote that Margot told him that he was going to overthrow Henrik. He writes to him hoping that Margot won't take it too seriously. He says that everything will be fine between him and Urina, and if things get really tough, they can run away to another country. Keigo writes that as soon as he came to this world, Margot gave him weapons and armor for free. He says that he is very grateful to him for this. And then the hero writes that after that, Margot began to visit him at every opportunity. He says that it irritated him, but it was also fun. Keigo writes that he knows he can be a bit of aloof and knows that Margot tried very hard to keep him company. He thanks his friend for being there. He felt like he found salvation in it. He asks Margot to take care of everyone in Leicester, especially the adventurers whose lives depend on the dragon's anvil. And he and Sarasa Keigo wishes for happiness. He asks to keep Sarasa and Elsa in the dark about his thoughts on not being able to return to Leicester. He doesn't like to talk much, so he will leave it as is. Keigo hopes that his friend will understand him. He asks Margot to take care of herself and signs the letter in his own name. Margot clenches the paper in her fist in emotion. The protagonist writes to Juno that although he is embarrassed to talk about it, he said it to Margot. He writes to him that he will never return to Leicester. He tells his friend that he is indebted to him as they defeated the cockatrice together. Keigo writes that he couldn't do it alone, it was hard work, but it was wonderful when they got along. Keigo writes to his friend that when he lost his heart to Sarasa, he was so depressed and exhausted that the protagonist did not even know what to do. But he writes to him that he is very glad that he found himself Elsa. He writes to a friend that he is going to travel north to the city of Turin. And then he will continue to travel and protect Urina until she is safe. And when Keigo writes to Juno that a man must protect the woman he loves, his friend smiles with a feeling of strong agreement. Keigo apologizes, saying that he would stay with them forever, but the situation does not allow it. He asks Juno to look after everyone in Leicester and also asks him not to worry about him and Urina. And finally, Keigo asks his friend not to get involved in too many adventures and not to make Elsa cry. He asks to make her happy. And also asks not to tell the girls that he will not return. Keigo also tells his friend that his hut might be useful when they go into the forest, so he gives them full permission to use it. He texts Juno that he might be there with Elsa, and that Sarasa has the key, and also writes to his friend before they meet. Juno raises a glass to Keigo, saying that she will definitely help him and also wishing his friend good luck. Sarasa Keigo writes that although she may be worried that he won't return to Leicester, he promises her that he will definitely return. He also writes to the girl that Ash, who she always cared about, will miss her. He writes to Sarasa that as soon as he came to this world, she made a deal with him when she did not know what was good and what was bad. He thanks the girl for kindly introducing him to the Adventurers Guild, because without her help he would have left this world long ago.